brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
You know, all those smart meters they've been putting in the last decade across the United States that had all the software in them to track every device in your house? Oh, the feds are pushing software to monitor Americans' energy use. That's CNS News. And they're going to track everything you do and tax you for your usage on top of the taxes that are already there. And by the way, that was always in the white papers. That was always the big plans with Enron and others that developed these systems. All the major corporate rollouts that are happening of technology have the Trojan horse tracking, taxation, social control system built into them. And yuppies and people say, well, I don't care if they listen to me. Well, why has it always been illegal in free countries? Because it's used to oppress and rob you, dummies. You're like, well, I don't have anything to hide. I'll submit. And you will submit right into a forced labor camp. That's where this goes, fools. And we've got Obamacare bailout plan for insurance companies. That's coming up. Huge meltdowns on that front. The feds are now probing Chris Christie. Oh, he was buddies with Obama. See how that turned out for him? See how that went? No honor among thieves. He'll be partially burned, but then still run for president and then completely drop it so that Hillary, one of the most unpopular people in America, in a big Gallup poll yesterday, can be El Presidente. And why, if you don't vote for her, you're against women. And if you don't vote for Obama, you're against black people. No, I thought I was against having my guns taken and open borders and the end of sovereignty and being spied on. No, we all know. We all know gun ownership is about deep racism. And not liking Obamacare is about deep racism. Yeah, there's the Hillary Clinton ranks last on U.S. most admired list. Last in the United States in a new tracking poll. In fact, scroll down. I'll give them the poll there. If you scroll down. She ranks dead last on a new top 10 poll of Americans admire most. And at the bottom of the world admires most, behind celebs like Angelina Jolie and Russian President Vladimir Putin, according to YouGov.com poll conducted for the Times of London. That's just some of what we're going to cover. I said I would get to this yesterday, and I didn't, but sometime today I will cover this story out of the Daily Mail. Dealing with children who watch too much TV have damaged brain structures. We're going to be talking some about that, more about Obama, saying this will be his year of action, the year of the dictatorial executive, and we will also be taking your phone calls. And we have a special guest joining us on the transmission as well that I'll tell you about coming up after the break. We've got huge amounts of economic news. Look, just observing what's happening on the ground around the country and other parts of the world where I've traveled, and just observing what's really happening, there is a mania, a hysteria out there in the air. People are going crazy at record numbers, suicide at record numbers, get-rich-quick schemes at record numbers, because we live in a fraudulent economy more and more now. And I'm going to just tell you this. Watch who you're around. Watch who you work with very, very closely. And watch your six in life, because there is an underlying concern in the group collective mind about the future. And I've never felt so much anxiety and dread about economic collapse, war, you name it, and everyone's feeling it. And a lot of people can't differentiate why they're having so much anxiety, because your mind's very powerful. Even if you're dumbed down, your brain still knows there's big trouble going on. Bad Moon Rising. We need to get that as an intro. Bad Moon Rising. And there's a bad moon rising. Trouble on the way. And it's coming in a bunch of different permutations. But admitting we're facing the crises as we go into a very decadent bottom of a cycle will help us hopefully have a soft landing. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the 13th day of January 2014. I am your host, Alex Jones. We are broadcasting worldwide as we steam directly into the maelstrom of corporate global governance involved in an all-out, high-tech, technocratic siege operation against nation-states, individuals, the rule of law, and anything that stands in the way of their piratical rapine. This is one of the most important periods in human history that we're entering, if not the most important ever. Words cannot describe the massive changes that are happening, economic, spiritual, cultural, national, international, global, galactic, with all of the spacecraft and satellites and the things that are happening, the things that are happening with the sun. We are entering a maximum period of flux and change. Undoubtedly, it's here. Everyone could feel it. The average person cannot differentiate it from their own personal lives. And we are seeing meltdown levels throughout militaries worldwide, governments worldwide, corporations worldwide. Everything is beginning to melt down. It's all because the system's based on fraud now. Winners and losers are being picked by the globalists. They have hundreds of trillions of dollars a year to buy up the world, but it's not based in real manufacturing, real products, real ideas. They've had to sell a culture of fraud, lies, mental illness, and 2 + 2 = 5 to the world population to get away with all this corruption. But that virus of fraud has now entered the system. Computers are malfunctioning. Trains are crashing and exploding. More aircraft are going to be crashing. They already are. You're going to see more divorce. You're going to see more murder. You're going to see more corruption, get-rich-quick schemes, mass mental illness. There is a spiritual plague coming upon not just the West, but the world. Batten down the hatches, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready, because it's only going to get more insane from here on out, as I've been telling you. The top story up on Infowars.com, in fact, it should be red-linked. It's such a big deal. There in the featured news area, is China set to seize South China Sea by force. Now, this is in the big Chinese daily newspapers. Paul Watson's wife that works for Infowars.com is Chinese. That's how we're able to have these articles every week, because this never hits the Western press until we usually carry it. We take it, translate it, put it out. DrudgeReport.com picks it up to the middle column today, 5th story down. And then, only then, does it even get picked up. In fact, most of the time, if we report this kind of stuff and Drudge doesn't pick it up, it doesn't even get picked up in the dinosaur media. Drudge has to pick it up to force them to cover it. But Chinese troops to seize the islands back from Philippines. And that is in the Chinese-approved government publication. I mean, government-affiliated publication. I mean, that is, whoa, that is a big deal. And you've got U.S. ships massing in the area in the last year. I mean, this is a serious confrontation. This is a big deal. World War II, as you know, started for the United States when the Japanese began to go into the Philippines and other areas as well. This has happened before. I mean, I'm telling you, folks, this is how World War III starts. When you've got giant global bubbles of fraud and the Anglo-American banksters sitting on top of that, they will always push countries into war. And they've built up China. They're pulling the strings there. They've built up the EU. I mean, and again, they're playing all of us off against each other. You got to pull back and see how this hyper-evil intelligence of the banksters, that's why they almost have world government in place right now. And if they've got to have a world war and kill 100 million, 200 million people to do it, they'll do it. They'll do whatever they have to bring in their total control. That's what they crave. That's what they're going after. That's their goal. And the globalists in many of their publications say that they will either have world governance and total control, and they will merge with the machines and become gods, or they will destroy the planet trying. That is the ultra hyper wildness of these people. I mean, you think the Wolf of Wall Street throwing naked midgets at giant targets is radical and crazy and wild? That's nothing. But that's a window for people into the power-tripping maniacalness of the elite how they get themselves into these modes of being willing to do anything and to be totally crazed while telling you to be milquetoast, sit in your chair, watch TV all day. They're not doing that. They're starting wars. They're running black ops. They got 15 mistresses. They're killing people on the side for fun at murder parties. They're molesting children. It, depends what group they're into. There's different guilds of evil, different armies of evil, different brigades of evil that then fit in like China dolls or Russian dolls, nesting together into the pyramid of Lucifer. And it is the total weapon system that they have, and they're now deploying it with their legions of doom against us. I mean, this is real. Look at every ruling culture, look at every dominant, corrupt empire at the end. They were always running around, engaged in human sacrifice, hanging children from meat hooks, bathing in blood. I mean, if you see a movie like Dune and you see Baron Harkonnen go up, with his suspensor belts into the ceiling and have rotten blood dumped on him, and then he goes over and pulls a heart plug out of a man that he's about to have necrophilic sex with after he's dead. People think, man, how did that director, because they changed the book, come up with that? I've interviewed the director and talked to him off air as well. Well, they got all that from history. That's the type of stuff that the elites really do, ladies and gentlemen. That's how a corrupt elitist actually acts. And so you need to understand that. I mean, what did Jimmy Savile? People said a decade ago he was into dead bodies and raping little children and bringing them to prime ministers to have their throats slit. And I heard that and was like telling people that were on his guest, hey, don't say any more of that on the air. You don't have proof. I don't want to get sued. And then later, most of it came out. And now they've killed people to cover it up in England. I mean, they kill children, folks, and have sex with their dead bodies. Okay? He ran the major children's charity. And you could take one look at Savile, and he looked like the archetypal pedophile. And I'm not trying to scare you here, folks. You need to understand when good people stand down and do nothing, the most evil take over. It's automatic. It's absolutely automatic. It'd be like if you went and spread out your picnic blanket on a bed of fire ants that you hadn't gotten rid of. What's going to happen when you spread out your picnic blanket and pull your food out? The fire ants are going to crawl up on the picnic blanket. They're going to start eating the food, and they're going to start stinging you, saying, my food. You let tyrants take over, they're going to come on the picnic blanket, they're going to eat the food, and they're going to attack you because you're the enemy. So they're not just going to rob everything, they're going to exterminate good people. They're going to hunt us down. You see, you can't just give them the world and be lazy and think, oh, they'll just go off and feed on the weak. They're done. They've already fed on the weak. They want to bring down the big game. They want to come after other elites that aren't degenerate. That's their number one goal. They cannot stand the other elites they're surveilling that are not degenerate. And they fear them. They fear that, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm telling you, they're coming. They're coming, drums, drums, drums in the deep. And now they're here. And I've got so much news. I've already gone off on a jag on this point. Point is, Infowars.com, neocons call for U.S. military against al-Qaeda in Iraq, the very al-Qaeda that is openly funded by our government. And I love Kurt's article. It's excellent, but I think the sub-headline should be, neocons call for U.S. military action against al-Qaeda in Iraq. Sub-headline, problem, reaction, solution, or U.S. forces to fight al-Qaeda armed in Benghazi, something like that, because that's the big, and of course his article breaks that down, but people need to see it in the headline. I don't even have time to go in there as an editor with the Infowars editor and talk to him about that headline. We're just working on better headlines that actually telegraph what the essence of what's going on, the incredible hypocrisy, so I just do it on air. Great article by Kurt Nimmo up there. The very al-Qaeda they've been arming in bases in western Iraq to attack Syria have now taken over Fallujah. And now it's an excuse for the U.S. to go back in again. See how this works? And continue to destabilize Iraq because the Iraqi government kind of kicked the globalist out and is trying to actually bring their country back. Oh, no, that's not allowed. Al-Qaeda is not just going to attack Syria and Egypt and everybody else to destabilize. And then when the Egyptian military fights back, our media is like, how dare them attack the people launching rockets at their helicopters and attacking their bases. And I'm not defending the Egyptian military, but You know, they didn't want martial law there. They want prosperity, but they're having to fight off Western al-Qaeda who attack them. And our media, CNN, says they're the bad guys for fighting al-Qaeda. Well, it's the same thing. They've got al-Qaeda as agents of chaos. If you want to keep Syria broken in multiple pieces, Iraq broken in multiple pieces, you deploy the radical Islamic brainwashed robots that culturally mind-controlled, perfect, idiot, useful idiots, to then attack everyone. It isn't that they work even for the West. They're empowered, they're funded, and then they're turned loose. They're turned loose like an elephant on PCP at a PTA meeting to attack everyone. And the globalist alt-right white papers on how they do this. Brzezinski wrote the Grand Chessboard in 1999, bragging how they would use al-Qaeda to bring down the world and bring down Western liberty, and how magic they were, and how his master plan from 1979 that was adopted is the key, and he's the smartest man in the world. And I mean, criminals love to brag, and I'm sitting here looking at this. That's how dumb they think you are. I mean, all you got to do is pull back and see how these people operate. They're attacking everyone. They're attacking all countries. They're attacking everyone. They're even attacking themselves because they're evil. They come to what? Kill, steal, destroy. What's that again? The goal is death. The goal is murder. The goal is blood. I made that little joke there because we're following the old way of tyranny, getting away from the new way of the Bill of Rights, Constitution, Declaration of Independence. And the worse things get, the establishment pushes more of their tyranny, more of going back to thug-run systems, oligarchical systems of autocratic fraud. We need to get back to what created all this wealth. The problem is that you create the wealth, you're free, all of the locust, all of the progressive tyrants, all the progressive control freaks who say they have the moral high ground and they govern style and culture. They then move into areas that you've built up. Texas is evidence of this, and then try to take your guns and try to bring in high taxes again and try to wreck everything and fet the nest. Spew their scrofulous pus all over the nest and then flap off to the next victim. And they're so cyclopsian in their total myopic tunnel vision that they don't even know what they're doing. Forgive them, Father. They know not what they do. The hordes of dumbed-down, slobbering goblins that are the general public that serve the system, a large portion of humanity, verging on a majority. It's in the high 40s in my dead reckoning guesstimation, are a torrent, a beam of scum, a energy weapon, a directed energy cultural morass that is spewed out as a weapon system, a burrowing system for the worms of the New World Order that follow it. Then you've got the dark generals, the social engineers, perched up above it, commanding the tempest of evil that they direct. And though I wax poetic, that is the only way to describe this great evil we face. And I mourn every day what we're going to go through. We have only seen the beginning. We have only begun to enter into this system. This is a short segment. I'm going to focus and come back and tell you the guest that's coming up and get into all the news. And there is just so much of it, ladies and gentlemen. Again, here's the Infowars.com headlines. Neocons call for U.S. military action against al-Qaeda in Iraq, the same group that they built bases in western Iraq for to attack Syria. China set to seize South China Sea island by force. The United States and others said they will respond with force, and, well, that's World War III. That's in the major Chinese newspapers, not being reported here in the United States, except for Infowars.com and DrudgeReport.com. Why the risk of world war is rising. Washington's blog breaks down a bunch of different pieces of data. The number of working-age Americans without a job has risen by almost 10 million under Obama. Absolutely. Over 100 million people are out of work. Met Police report, corrupt Freemasons run the UK legal system. Yeah. They've used that system, that ancient brotherhood, to then bring in their own mafia system. What a disgrace. Congress defers to the president on NSA reform, handing him dictatorial power. That is such a huge deal. Ron Paul's writing about it on Infowars.com. That's part of the move toward dictatorship. And when did America turn into the Soviet Union? Another excellent report. And then another one from the Ron Paul Institute. Is Obama trying to resolve or prolong the conflict in Syria? They're trying to break the country in 3 parts on record. That's the official policy. So, so many times we ask, you know, is that a yellow taxi cab in New York pulled up with checkers on it? Yeah, it's a yellow taxi cab. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. It's out in the open. We have to admit it. That's the thing. Tyranny comes, and then we just kind of go, is this really happening? Oh, no, the guys that talk about it are kooks, even though they're absolutely on target and should be carried around on people's shoulders. Now, when we come back, I'm going to get into the really big news. DOE, Department of Energy, is pushing total tracker systems for your homes, similar to the rating systems and black boxes in your cars. And, of course, the black box is already going on your house. They're called smart meters. And then they announce it to you after it's in place. We're going to get into the latest on Obamacare and the new political movement that's exploding on the other side. Again, I'm not trying to scare people, laying out what we're really facing. You need to know the real threat. You need to understand the real threat. If we as a society have any hope in countering this, because that's the leg up that evil always has, is that good people just cannot imagine that they're actually facing something this bad. And by the way, that's 101 of criminology. 101 of kidnappers, 101 of con artists, 101 of all different types of criminal activity, is that the public cannot believe that they're actually being abused. Now, the government can teach you to fear your neighbor cleaning their gun in their garage, and you call the cops and they come and arrest them, even though the guns are legal. They can teach the public that if you see a parent spank their child, it's illegal. The cops come, CPS comes. They say, we believe you must be doing other abuse, even though the spanking isn't illegal. We're going to take your child. So again, they can create the perception when things aren't an issue that it's illegal, and even convince juries and send you to jail. But then when there's real mass organized crime with the Federal Reserve, with foreign corporations controlling the government, you get to the point where people just think, well, that's the government, they're allowed to do that. And once you get to the point where they're dictatorial and can get away with anything, Katie barred the door. We're going to be talking about that after I cover some of this energy news and more in a moment. But first off, this broadcast is listener supported, and we carry the very best ProPure Pro One water filtration systems, the entire selection at the lowest price anywhere with 10% off promo code WATER. And your purchase makes our broadcasting operations, our news division, our TV division, the filmmaking, everything we do that is undoubtedly now at the very tip of the spear fighting globalism and tyranny worldwide. I can't believe that responsibility. Lord, give me strength. But I want to thank all of you. And I want to salute all of you that have purchased from InfoWarsStore.com over the years. I want to thank all of you that have voted with your dollars to support the broadcast and get the high-quality products at the same time, because without your support, none of this would be possible. So thank you so much, and God bless you. Check out the even wider selection. They've got some new products out on Pro One with the Pro Pures at InfoWarsStore.com, or call toll-free, and our great crew can answer your questions and help you get an order in or not. 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. Now, again, it is absolutely essential, ladies and gentlemen, that you also check out the incredible products at InfoWarsLife.com, like the Fluoride Shield that has the 5 key ingredients with the nascent iodine all in one double-sized 2-ounce bottle that with a fusion is able to really protect the thyroid, draw out the toxins, the heavy metals, the fluorines on the halogen table. Such an important development. Fluoride Shield, available at InfoWarsLife.com. We have the nascent iodine as well. More of it comes in a couple days. You can order it. And essentially, we're not back-ordered anymore, but technically we are. It'll be shipping out by the end of the week. Survival Shield, more of that coming in the next few days. InfoWarsLife.com, the pure proprietary nascent iodine Survival Shield, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. And lastly, folks, this hour is brought to you by MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex. The highest quality storable foods. We only go with the best companies. They're Patriots, MyPatriotSupply.com. And they have all the highest quality things like Life Straw, Survival Seed Vault, same stuff we sell. And why is that? Because we only sell the best stuff too. The point is they're great folks, have really low prices, and the very best storable food, non-GMO, super high quality, biggest selection. Again, MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex, and they make this hour possible. Okay, I want to give the phone number out for first-time callers today who are in radiology or who work at nuclear power plants or who have worked at nuclear power plants, because I'm going to cover some other news. We're going to take a raft of calls at the start of the next hour on this, but you can line up now. We may even go to you in the next segment. But I specifically want to hear from radiologists, nuclear physicists, plant workers, decontamination specialists. I've interviewed physicists, scientists. You've heard them. But I want to get your perspective on some areas of the West Coast having 1,400% higher increases of normal background radiation. 1,400% than what's supposed to be normal. Other areas, 100. You have 100 millirads, so that's only triple what it's supposed to be, roughly. The point is it's going up. The radiation wave is intensifying, coming in from Fukushima. That's major university studies. I want to get your take on this. Do you really think this is a big deal, or what would you do if you were on these areas of the West Coast? Bottom line, all the local health departments should be out there with Geiger counters and then giving people the numbers and then at least giving them the option to move back from the beach. The good news is areas like Santa Cruz, we're on the radio, don't have any higher levels of radiation. But then you go up the coast, or Monterey Bay has a little bit of an increase. The Redwoods have a doubling. If you're around San Francisco, it's 1,400% higher. I mean, this should be a real debate. We should force this into dinosaur media, which we've done on the newspapers and a lot of talk radio that's not really dinosaur media. I mean, it's super dinosaur, but it's like alligators that live into the future. That's the analogy of talk radio. It's the original alternative media. It's the original wide open, what people really think without a script, crossing the lines of race, religion, political persuasion to have a real discussion. And so I know a lot of talk show hosts have been covering it, doing their own positive reports. And by positive, I mean saying it's positive for us to go out with Geiger counters and try to cause a debate. That a debate is always good. So 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Where is the government telling people that they should be taking iodine to protect their thyroid of their body? Where is the government telling people about these increased levels and the dangers? They're not. So it's our job to do it if other people won't do it. But just 25, 30 years ago, this would be big news, and you would see a major debate about it. Not that our media was even perfect then, but it was less controlled. It was more diverse. There were hundreds of companies providing large national coverage in newspapers, radio, TV. Now you don't have that. So it's up to us in the new media, the real media, to challenge the corporate state-run media. And we're doing that, and we are becoming the new dominant media. These people are extincting themselves. The mainstream media is committing suicide. And the political system is committing suicide as well. Let me take you to this article just to illustrate. This is the Financial Times of London. And you've probably heard me say this 5,000 times in the last few years, but here it is in the establishment publication. The tide is rising for America's libertarians. The new spirit is rising. Climate of anti-politics has become an attitude rather than a movement. And that is so dead on with what Edward Luce just said there. It's an attitude. We've already won the hearts and minds. The people at the Pentagon don't want to sell America out, even high level. It's suicide. even if you're somewhat corrupt, and a lot of them are, you don't want to destroy the country. You don't want to destroy where you live, the tree you're sitting in. And now that it's gotten so bad, people in the corporate structure, governmental structure, Pentagon structure, our religious structure are now starting to go, man, do we really want to gut America for world government and get screwed in the process ourselves? I mean, they're now down to bite the bullet time. It's now down to really killing America. And when they've only gotten us sick and debilitated in a position chained down right now to do the dirty work. And it's going to be, they're going to take their time carving us up. We're talking blowtorches. We're talking pliers societally. I mean, the globalists, that's the goal, is gutting us. That's what they want. That's not in the way of their goal. The goal is rampant death and insanity, French Revolution garbage. This is a Jacobin operation, 110%. You want to say what the New World Order is? It is the Jacobin Society, or you know them as the Illuminati, a real group who took a fake revolution against tyranny that was already there, the monarchy, and brought in something 25 times worse. Our revolution did not go the same direction, and George Washington fought the Illuminati, even though he had been a proto-member of it. Yes, George Washington, the evidence is overwhelming, was offered the command of the Illuminati, and that's why the King of England called him the greatest man alive in the world after he defeated the British, was offered kingship and said no, was offered the head of the Illuminati, which at one level was trying to overthrow the British Empire, not to get rid of it, but to take control of it, by a Luciferian group. And George Washington said, I stand against the monarchy and I stand against the Illuminati. I mean, what an incredible individual. I mean, that is amazing. That's why I like George Washington. And nobody will tell you this stuff. Nobody will tell you the real secrets. They're not even secrets. They're there in the historical record. And the King of England just could not believe the incredible goodness of this. And even though he was inbred German Transylvanian royalty and had all these issues, he literally became a worshiper of George Washington at that point. And how could you not admire something like that? Offered kingship over North America. Turns it down. Offered kingship worldwide of a movement to create a new Illuminati royalty elite. Turns it down. Offered double kingships. Turned them both down. Double kingships. Turned them both down and went back to his farm. And then was clearly assassinated by his doctor later. The evidence of that came out. The founder of modern psychiatry. Killed George Washington. The evidence is overwhelming. Killed George Washington, bleeding him to death because he was fighting the Illuminati and was getting ready to go public even though he was in bad health and fight them. And wrote letters saying that. Because he didn't want to see a French Revolution here where they killed 10% of the population, and not even the wealthy. It was an inner group of wealthy wanting to take over and have a 9-day work week and change the seasons and break up families and make boys dress like girls and girls like boys and break down society and torture everyone and kill everyone. You know, I read that 1984 passage about trampling and being trampled. Not a society that judges itself by getting better but by getting worse. That's Jacobin Illuminati. The Satanists say that they are all about empowering the individual and all about, no. They're about totally dominating anyone ever able to compete with them and murdering and torturing and killing and burning and destroying. Again, if you're a radiation person, work in power plants, work on nuclear aircraft carriers, submarines, retired, currently working there, radiologist, physicist, nuclear physicist, we want to hear from you. We can't call Dr. Bob Bowman anymore, nuclear physicist. He's dead. We had Buzz Beyond, chemical and theoretical physicist last week. We want to get your take on all this. 800-259-9231. But you've got to understand what we're fighting is the same energy force that we've been fighting all along that can manifest in Chinese, in Jews, in Germans, in Mexicans, in anybody. It is the same system of psychopathic control freak behavior that builds the same structures every time. Pyramids with children being sacrificed at the top of them. Like a certain breed of spider, you could take spider eggs, they've done this, and freeze them. And 20 years later, unfreeze them, and the spiders will, come out and build the same web. You can take papyrus seeds out of a 3,000-year-old Egyptian tomb and plant them in the Nile Delta, and they will come back up. Same deal. It's a wavelength. It's a genetic spiritual code. It's a system. We're fighting the very same thing that we've gone up against over and over again. Do you get that? You are now in the shoes of George Washington, staring into an Illuminati Jacobin onslaught. Again, the minute we launched our revolution, of course, they had double agents in our operation as well. This is our ancestors, but I'm speaking for them. You can speak for them. You are them. You understand that genetically? You are them. You to your mother, your father, back physically in a connection to your ancestors. Like electricity, through time, genetics is actually a projection like a particle beam traveling through the space-time continuum. And you have to decide to allow that spiritual charge of goodness from the past to then be risen up to fight the evil that is also transmitting the same way through its agents. And this isn't even spiritual or new agey stuff, folks. This is epigenetic facts. This is a reality. And I've got all this news I haven't even gotten to yet, and I said I'm going to get to your calls. The point is, the tide is rising for America's libertarians. New spirit is rising. Climate of anti-politics has become an attitude rather than a movement. It's not anti-politics, though. It's anti-fraudulent, manipulated left-right controlled by the globalists that Carol Quigley wrote about. There's an awakening to that across the board of live and let live. And the system doesn't like it. It's trying to figure out how to hijack it and turn it into a French Revolution instead of our 1776. The minute our forebears launched a 1776, they launched a 1776 in Ingolstadt University in Germany, into France, into England, using the Masonic order as a medium, like cuter in a petri dish, to grow. Using government institutions, military institutions, to come in with their cult takeovers and take over operations. And that's exactly what George Washington wrote about. As a Mason, to other Masons warning them. And most Masons are total Illuminati captured now. They don't even know it. They're there to provide money for the central committees to be sent on for operations. So this is the issue. And I'm not indicting anybody, okay? My point is, it's a fact. You better face it. And we are the future. And believe me, I don't like this responsibility of being at the very tip of the spear in this. But it is something that I am going to go forward in. It is something that I am going to embrace. I may have to take some days off here and there in the future to just get rested and get myself ready for all this, for all the things that are coming, because I realize if I work 6, 7, 8 days a week, 15 hours a day, I then am too exhausted. But I am going to up my game in a more focused way against these people, because total history is happening. And all I can say to you out there is, you're living history right now. Don't think you're just a spectator and a bystander. Get out of your comfort zone. Realize the urgency of what's happening currently, and realize you're in a total war. A total war against death. A total war against systematic, mechanized, organized evil that is establishing a planetary technocracy, a technological coup, breakaway civilization development to hyper-dominate the species forever in an ultimate act of human sacrifice against the species itself by irrevocably twisting the human genetics. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live. I will go to your phone calls now. And then I want to get into your cell phone, your smart meter, the black box in your car. I told you, because it was in all their own white papers, everything's going to track you and tax you until you're bankrupt. And it's all going to be actuaried out that if you're not part of the elite, even if you have millions of dollars, they're going to suck all the money out of you. The technocracy is about being able to selectively enforce total evil, total siege, because they enjoy it. We're going to get into the feds beginning to probe Christie. That's like Satan probing one of his lower minions. We're going to get bailing out health insurers and helping Obamacare. Oh, now to make it work, we don't just give them double or triple money. You bail out the insurers and give them more money. Oh, it's so liberal. That's why all the big rich guys funded Obama, because they wanted to give you free health care because they loved you. And if you don't like it, you're racist. I mean, does anyone really believe this? Well, you're now believing the doubling, tripling your rates, aren't you? We're going to be getting into that. We're going to be getting into just so much here that's in my stacks of news. We're going to be breaking it all down, ladies and gentlemen. And meanwhile, the communist Chinese and the globalists are talking about having a war with each other in the South China Sea. That's up on Infowars.com. Red linked. I mean, I know it's not as important as the playoff game last night, but, you know, if there is a nuclear war, it might be almost as important as a playoff game. Also, future sheriff says protesters should be exterminated in gas chambers. That just broke. Neocon calls for U.S. military action against al-Qaeda they put in charge in western Iraq. Oh, yeah, all just very wonderful. So right now, let's go to your phone calls here. Heather in Wyoming says she's a radiology tech. I wanted to get her take on the radiation levels being confirmed by the health departments out in California.
Bless you, Alex Jones. I want to first say that radiation exposure is linear and non-threshold, which means, you know, even a little bit amount of radiation, there is a negative effect somewhere that can accumulate. Secondly, that radiation exposure on the West Coast, it's low dose of an unknown particulate matter, and it's going to be a chronic exposure. Now, we don't have a whole lot of science on that in itself except for Chernobyl, but there's a prodromal period and a latent period with radiation exposure, and I would say we would see negative adverse effects much later, like clusters of thyroid and bone cancers, breast cancers, cataracts, leukemia. That will happen probably much, much later in time. So it's very difficult to say, and we need more information about what these particles are.
Exactly, and that's something that major media with huge funding, major newspapers, health departments, state governments, federal government should be responding to. Instead, when we force this out in the open, with Infowars.com and DrudgeReport.com and others talking about it, they just go, okay, it's increased, but we're not going to investigate why. And it's that attitude of, we never look, the dust at the World Trade Center's not bad for you, but they knew it was bad and covered it up. Agent Orange isn't bad for humans. They knew full well it would kill them. I mean, it's just this evil attitude that's increasing.
Well, I agree, and that's all I really have to add. We need to get more information before we even speculate on what can happen. And but it's not good. I mean, I'm taking your nascent iodine. I've been taking it, since you started it out, and giving it to my family. And that's about all that I can do.
Absolutely. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to GCN.
Well, if you just joined us, China set to seize South China Island by force from the Philippines. That will undoubtedly trigger military action by the West. That's being reported in major publications in China that are government approved. So this is a huge escalation. That's up on Infowars.com. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we have a doctor popping in to give his take on the increased radiation levels coming in from the new Fukushima wave. We're getting a short report at the start of the next hour. We'll get a few more this week and then move on. But I'm just simply trying to ascertain how serious the radiation waves coming in from Fukushima are on the West Coast. And we found up to 10 times ourselves of normal background radiation, or 1,000%. Others have found 1,400%. The health department confirmed 500+%. In one spot they checked, said it's no big deal. And in the past, this would be a big deal. That's been confirmed. So we're there focusing on it. But we're going to continue with your calls, get into a bunch of news this hour, obviously on a host of issues. But let's go to Justin in Washington. Says he worked for a company that builds the pumps for reactors, and is going to give his take on this situation. How big of a deal is this, or what do you think is really going on here?
Well, Alex, I was living over in Tri-Cities, and I was working for a company that designed the pump and treat system. And, I went out there, I did the B reactor tour. It was just incredible on how much work went into that. But I really didn't, they really didn't tell you exactly everything until I moved out of Tri-Cities. And then I heard I was listening to the radio while I was driving the moving truck out of Tri-Cities. And it's funny how much they talk about Hanford outside of Tri-Cities. Like, when you're living there, they're like, yeah, you're good. But then once I moved over to Seattle, I actually got to hear the people talk about, oh, no, the leaks are, they're leaking and it's not very good. And I was cracking me up.
Well, that's the attitude, even with DU, with the troops, is this is nothing to worry about. This is no big deal. But 25, 30 years ago, they wouldn't let them use DU, saying that low exposure would end up killing you. But it kills you 25 years later, so you don't get blamed for it. It's called soft kill. Appreciate the call. Let's talk to the Nothing, radiation technician, radiology technician in hospital. What's your take on this?
Well, my take is the Lord says the meek shall inherit the earth. He said he'd sent his angels down to cast out demons. Well, what makes you think those angels aren't human beings?
Well, sir, I appreciate your call, but we don't screen calls unless it's on a subject. And then when I open the phones up on that subject, I wanted to know from people that worked in hospitals or nuclear reactors or nuclear submarines or people that are nuclear physicists what your take is. We have a wide, diverse audience, and I want you to leave the phones open for those folks that want to call in on a real topic. 800-259-9231. Now, when we have open phones to talk about anything in a free-for-all, you're welcome to call in about angels. But 800-259-9231. We're going to come back from break here and talk to Ralph, who was a nuclear worker, Frank, who was a heavy or Navy nuclear tech, and then we'll also talk to Frank in Michigan, Brian and others to get their takes on this. I really want to hear your perspective from different fields that deal with radioactive substances. 800-259-9231. We only do this a few times a week when we open the phones up on a particular subject. So please, folks, you're not going to get on air and then talk about whatever you want. I'm going to crack down on all the craziness. Okay? It's that simple. I've always prided myself on not screening calls, but when the show gets this big and you got a bunch of people calling in to try to derail the program, we're not going to let you do that, okay? We're done. All right, we'll be right back with serious callers on the other side. And just huge news on Obamacare, Chris Christie, what television does to your children's brains, and so much more. Waging war on corruption. Crashing through the lies and disinformation. Monday through Friday. 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, coming to you from deep in the heart of Texas, Austin, broadcasting worldwide. Thank you so much for joining us. Now well into the second hour, your phone calls from nuclear technicians in the Navy and radiology workers on the radiation wave now slamming into the West Coast. We're continuing our coverage and investigation of that, and I want to hear from you if you think it's a serious threat from the different reports that we've gotten with our own Geiger counters, with our reporters that are popping in at the beginning of the next hour, and what your take is on all of this. But there's going to be a ton of other news we're going to cover in the meantime. Let me hit some of that right now. Again, I covered this last hour, but I want to mention it again now. The tide is rising for American libertarians. Financial Times of London. The new spirit is a rising climate of anti-politics has become an attitude rather than a movement. And it's true. What you call libertarians are people that are live and let live. They're just humans. They don't want to fight with people. They don't want racial politics or party politics. They want freedom. Whether it's guns or whether it's drug decriminalization or whether it's not having regulations on haircutting places or peace, they're just Americans. They're Renaissance type people who are true classical liberals like Thomas Jefferson. That's what it is. Common sense. You shouldn't have the federal government running the schools, much less teaching 2 + 2 = 5. Done. The government's evil, trying to screw up the kids' brains to control them. You guys are done. Big Pharma comes out and admits their plan under the New Freedom Initiative 10 years ago when it started was to go from 10% of kids on psychotropics to 20%. And in the next decade, we're now 4 years into that, they wanted to go to 50% on psychotropic drugs. And then finally, they want to go above 90% on the drugs. And that got leaked by people that were part of the New Freedom Initiative on the board saying this is evil. This is a diabolical plan. And my point is, the fruits of this are as bad as it gets. I'm going to cover this more in the days to come, but this is a big issue, and it shows where things are going. There's another article that's up on Infowars.com that is so incredibly important by Ron Paul. Congress defers to president on NSA reform. It is Congress's law enforcement edict to actually create the laws and then enforce on the executive and the rest of the bureaucracy via control of the purse string, the implementation via the purse string to enforce the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And they're not doing that. And so this is such a big deal to have Ron Paul come out and expose what's happening here. We need to understand it's part of a larger program. It's part of a larger takeover. Here is the article in the Washington Times. Year of action, Obama vows to act on his own when necessary. And you have Congress coming out and saying, well, we're just going to let you do whatever you want. Passing the buck, supporting dictatorial movements in the executive. And it's a big deal to have Ron Paul call this what it is, tyranny. It's a big deal to have Ted Cruz come out and call Obama dangerous and frightening. Because that's what it is. And you're like, but why is it a big move for them to tell the truth? Because we have to up our rhetoric to reality. When things are sensational, when things are out of control, when things are crazy, when things are incredibly oppressive, we have a responsibility as a nation, as a people, to then tell it like it is. Now, getting into some other articles so people understand what we're facing. Department of Energy plugs energy rating for homes similar to MPG rating for cars. And then again, they won't let homes be reinsured or worked on or upgraded or changed under Agenda 21. This has already been done in Europe and Australia. They literally have zoning police, green police, you name it. And then they can add fines, fees, regulations. And then they even want systems with software to track and surveil everything you're doing in your house through the smart meter that then just by accident, all the new appliances in the last 5 years are set with specifications and chips that wirelessly report everything back to the government robot that's been plopped on the side of your house. That's literally a government NSA spy robot. If it was a guy in a black suit with black sunglasses, black tie, you would go out and say, how dare you have a glass to your ear listening to my window? But it's just a little box. It's on the side of your house, and it, of course, microwaves you as well, uses microwave transmitting, blurp technology. Blurp communications is what I call it, you know, the flash communications, blasting through your house. There's the health issues, but so what? We're going to tax you by the mile in your car. We're tracking everything you do, suckers. I'm the head spokesman for Ford Motor Company. Suckers. All the cars got boxes, and we're tracking you, and we're going to tax you. And then once we put the robot cars on the streets, it's already happening, we're going to show that they're even safer. We're going to make you buy wireless packages with us for the robot to control everything you're doing. You're not going to be able to drive. Everything you do is going to be tracked. And we're going to know what kind of food you're buying for your kids and your family and give that to the insurance companies. And then you're going to get CPS visits that your kids aren't eating healthy. I mean, folks, this is a nightmare where everything you do is in a file with some aggressive, predatory, bug-eyed, pedophile CPS agent or some crazy sheriff's deputy like the one reportedly up on Infowars.com saying, I would beat your bleeping bleep just for the sheer joy of it, and says that any protesters that film police should be put in gas chambers and beaten. I mean, this is the type of stuff, folks. This is because they go now in these major globalist cities, and they're hiring now people that are goons and who literally want to be able, with overwhelming force, with everybody else's hands tied, knowing you're facing felonies, to beat you and attack you, and then charge you with a felony when they attack you. And this is how North Korea works. This is how Mexico works. This is how we now are going to work. Now, there's an internal fight inside the police forces nationwide, and some departments are really good and honorable. And they're pretty much either good and honorable or they're pure evil. There's not really a lukewarm anymore. It's just either going to hell or the police are circling the wagons and fighting the federal takeover and trying to be human beings. But I just cannot explain to you how serious the situation is. Let's go back to your phone calls. Ralph in Oklahoma, and then we'll go to Frank in Texas. Ralph, you say you're a nuclear worker. What, a nuclear power plant?
Worked in the power plants. Did a lot of inspections for Sequoia Fuels Corporation, the old Silkwood place. Inspected Pine Bluff. Inspected in Connecticut. What can I do? What can I tell you?
Well, I wanted to ask you. I mean, is 1,400% higher radiation in San Francisco beaches? Is that an issue? In the past, they would make a big deal out of it. I talked to the radiation specialist, the radiologist. They say that in the past this would be a big deal, but now there's a touchy-feely attitude that, like Ann Coulter said, maybe it's good for you. What's your take on that?
Well, if it's that much, the new commission over it be shutting things down, doing something with this. As you said, I'm not that educated on that iodine. I've had some friends into it telling me about it. I guess people need to take this upon their own because you don't know unless you can buy you a survey meter, which y'all are calling a Geiger counter. There is. So you can buy those relatively cheap if you're out there. I'm surprised that California's letting this go on as stringent as their laws are, because they had been on me a few times over my inspections out there and saying I couldn't do that. I had to rewrite reports and things before they would accept stuff.
Well, see, they're just covering their butt to act like they're trying to protect people. But then, yeah, they don't want to have to go out and clean up these beaches or go and find out where it's really coming from. They just want to deny it because there's not some private contractor that they can harass. Let me guess, you're a private contractor. These are government people that are harassing you.
Yeah, the government be all on you. I talked to a person who was in the government pretty heavy, and they had said, we were talking on the phone. I told him, well, I'm a nuclear worker, and used to call me the Cobalt Kid. I was into it so much. He said, I think we need to get off the phone now. Don't be telling anybody that you were a nuclear worker. The government is going to be on your butt. I mean, when you need the government in there over some bad stuff, actually hurting people, overexposing people, they didn't give a rat's ass. But now, if you made a little bit mistake, they'd be on you. They'd be on you like white on rice.
Oh, yeah, I know, because they want to cover their butts when everything starts melting down and falling apart, because they're letting these plants go 35, 40 years when they're only supposed to go 25, 30 years. And so that's what this is. The bureaucrats are just going to scapegoat people that didn't dot I's, cross T's when you were told to do that. And exactly, they're going to scapegoat you guys. That's absolutely how this works.
Yeah, that went on too much because if you like making your big money, which the nuclear workers, the inspectors and things out there be laughing at this. If you want to make that big money, keep your mouth shut, do your damn job. Or we can get somebody, there's another person in line here. I've seen so many people they've drug off the streets and put in these places that didn't know a rat's butt. I took the grief to get into this, and these people didn't do nothing 3 months on the deal. They're shooting gammies.
Now I hear they have homeless people. Nothing against homeless folks, but I don't want them doing brain surgery on me, doing the cleanup at Fukushima. That one rod touches, it all blows up. And so the answer is send in elderly homeless drunks to do the inspection. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Hi, folks. Alex Jones here with some important information. We are continuing to look at the situation with radiation waves that Fox News is reporting are coming into the West Coast as the plant on the ocean side in the Pacific in Japan continues to melt down. And we're going to shift gears into some other news coming up later as well. Most of the third hour will be geopolitical news, Chris Christie news, And even though this Chris Christie thing is a diversion at a certain level, it's an illustration of the arrogance and corruption. And now the feds are probing Christie, and the fact that this is the supposed front runner for the Republicans, an anti-gun, open borders thug, just shows how they just put forward John McCain or whoever they want and put forward Hillary, who's incredibly unpopular, because it's a ruling, corrupt group that's hijacked the country. And I know you know that, and all the numbers show that, and even the establishment publications, like the Financial Times of London, say the government's discredited. No one likes the government. People are sick of fighting with each other. They believe that they have a criminal system and want to change it. And people want freedom. Not, you're racist if you don't want Obamacare. You're racist if you don't want to turn your guns in. People are smart enough to go, I'm racist if I don't turn my gun in? Black people and folks are smart. They're going, what's a gun have to do with that? I need a gun to protect myself. Now everybody realizes Obamacare is a big screw job, and people that were against it weren't against it because they were racist. They were against it because they knew it was a horrible screw job. And so it's just the baloney isn't working anymore is what I'm getting at. Let's go to Frank in Texas, nuclear Navy tech. What is your take on this? Should we not make a big deal out of this and try to get a national discourse going on the radiation wave as I'm trying to do, covering this every day lately? Or are we on the right track from your perspective, Frank?
Well, I think it's a huge deal. We treated every drop of radioactive substance as a major deal. So basically, if the levels are where they're at, we should really be treating it like a contamination area, a controlled contamination area. And I don't think that the government wants to admit to it because who's going to pay for it? It's going to cost too much money. So, we were kind of taught as a little bit of a joke, but the solution to pollution is dilution. But, I don't think we should just let nature take its course. We got to do something. Couple points that, depends on what type of particle you're detecting. And, there's high energy ones that move fast. There's slow, heavy ones. You have to figure out what it is. And
exactly, and that's not my job. We're out there with the field meters, out there with the modern Geiger counters. The health department confirms the numbers we're getting. And so that's all we're doing is as professional reporters, but not radiologists. But we're having a radiologist on. We're trying to find out for myself and my family. I want to know. And so that's what I'm trying to do is just get a discourse going so we can not ignore this. Because in the past, they wouldn't ignore this like this. I've studied it. They wouldn't ignore it as bad. And it's part of this attitude of like the deadly dust at the World Trade Center. They should have told people, hey, it's dangerous. If you want to be around it, that's your issue. But you should wear breathing protection. But they went, oh, no, there's no issue. Even though they told EPA workers, you wear a mask, don't be in the area, this is going to kill people. It's that, I mean, that's criminal. Your job is to tell folks if an area is dangerous, and then you lie to them and tell them it's not dangerous. Aren't you, in a way, assaulting them? Isn't that a form of murder? Frank?
Commonality between the public. They don't want to know, and they don't want to deal with it. So there you go.
Well, I think you're right. I think a lot of it is the public has a attitude of giving up, and so they're not upset. They're not pushing. And a fish doesn't just rot from the head. It can rot both ways. I agree that it is the general malaise of the public that empowers all this evil. What do you think we should do?
I guess, continue to use different types of detectors, warn the public, time distance shielding. Limit your time, stay away from it, and wear clothes. Clothes will stop some of the particles from actually absorbing to your skin, just like, going out in the sun. One kind of tidbit, the average person receives, a couple hundred millirem a year just from the rocks in the soil, and that's particularly from radon. So you could limit that exposure by just wearing clothes and staying away from the beaches that have the higher amount.
And protect your thyroid with things like iodine. Do you agree with that?
Exactly. Big time. Oh, yeah, I take Survivor Shield, Fluoride Shield. I try the Vitality. That stuff's great. I'm waiting on another delivery, though. So.
God bless you, brother. I really appreciate your support. We'll be back. All right, when we start the next hour, I will shift gears into all the other geopolitical, economic, military news. There's so much incredible information I'm going to cover. The globalists think we're so dumb, they're openly saying they want to invade Iraq again, in central and western Iraq, to kick out al-Qaeda, when our government's been funding al-Qaeda, protecting al-Qaeda, giving them amphetamines, medium weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, Benghazi, the whole 9 yards, to attack the entire region. And the goal is destabilization. So you put al-Qaeda in place, you can then come kick them out. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So I'm going to break that down as well. Dr. Rick Davis is an MD. He's headed up a whole bunch of well-known biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies with numerous U.S. patents and trademarks under its belt. Ogenix.com is the website, OGENX.com. And he served as Lieutenant Commander of the U.S. Navy and worked as an emergency medical physician, naval flight surgeon at Navy SEALs, you name it, and hyperbaric diving medical officer. He received his MD from the Medical College of Virginia with honors in '81. He graduated magna cum laude with a BS in chemistry from Old Dominion University in '77 when I was 4 years old. I guess 5 years old. No, I was about 4 years old then. Point is that, or even younger, 3 years old. But he joins us for the balance of this hour to give us his take on 91% of nuclear reactors leaking now. That's according to the UN. They just don't seem to care anymore. They don't care if the troops are in and around DU. Don't even decontaminate them now. Didn't even used to let them use it till 1990. Hard to believe it was that many years ago, 24 years ago. And it's just a total culture shift. So I've had Dr. Doug Rockey, the former head of the DU program, on, who wrote the book before they even used it on DU. And he says absolutely don't use it. And we're not talking about DU today. The point is that it's not just about radiation hitting the West Coast or coming over in the air all over the U.S., Canada, you name it. In the Northern Hemisphere, more than double the radiation it was in 1945. It's about an attitude across the board of not caring about the increased radiation levels, not about GMO, sterilizing the lab animals, not caring about what the fluoride does, and turns out it's on purpose. What does he think, is a really educated, smart guy? He's been on the Nightly News with Leanne McAdoo last week. What does he think the danger is? Where does he think Fukushima is going? Because he studied it and also obviously been in the Navy. And what does he think this is all indicative of? Is this just mass mental illness? Or is it orchestrated? We know part of it's orchestrated. Or are the mentally ill people believing that they're in control, as many crazy people do? So there's a method to the madness, but it's still madness. I mean, where does he think it's all going? So what's happening? Who's behind it? And where does he think it's going? Thank you so much for joining us here on the transmission today. Again, the website is OGENX.com. Dr. Rick Davis, medical doctor. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Alex, for having me. It's great to speak with you. And you asked me a very broad question. You asked me, where do I think this is going? Who do I think is behind this? And what is the end game? And I personally believe that the same people that are behind the nuclear disaster, which you've mentioned in a number of areas, the leaking plants, Fukushima itself, DU, etc., and the entire atomic energy system is coordinated and manifested by the same people who are in control of everything else. The GMO, all the soft kill that's going on across the world is orchestrated. It has to be. These things don't happen by accident. You don't by happenstance get a waiver to put a nuclear station on a fault line. That doesn't just happen by magic. There has to be a coordinated effort of people to do this. And of course, it is the epitome of insanity. And I believe that the people who run this planet are, in fact, psychopaths. We've talked about that before. And I believe that if you were to look at the total spectrum of the different ways that they would want to take control of society to bring about this utopia that they perceive as the New World Order, you know, a single government, single currency, single religion, single science. Those people would look at every opportunity. I mean, these are very, very smart people, far smarter than you and I. And they would look at how can we go about accomplishing this plan. They'd put together extensive business plans. They'd run computer simulations. They would figure out what are the best ways to accomplish the things that we want. And they'd have a plan A, plan B, plan C, a whole tiered structure of countermeasures to the actions that those of us who are sane and human and want a better life for ourselves and our family, they would have means and methods put in place. They'd have strategies. They'd have, all of the logistics and everything put together in order to try and combat common sense. And I think that that's what we're seeing. I mean, take Fukushima, for example. Here is a perfect situation where you have the perfect storm. You have an incident which I still am not completely clear that this was an entirely natural event. There have been a lot of reports by alternative media sources who claim to have more information than I do personally, that this may not have been an entirely natural event. And if that's the case, it would be put in the category of a false flag, much like a 9/11, where the plane is the deception, and the deception comes in, and then the buildings come down. But the buildings obviously were detonated, and that's been proven, I think, beyond a shadow of a doubt from any scientific perspective at this point.
Sure, and it shows just the mass mental illness, but a lot of psychopaths and other forms of mentally ill people that have high intelligence, they will tend throughout history to develop crazy plans. And now they've got movies coming out about people in love with their computers, about Johnny Depp uploading his brain into a computer. This is all Ray Kurzweil. This is all Google. This is all DARPA. This is what they said in the 30s they were going to do in all their white papers, and you've got to hand it to them. They've actually built it, so they don't care. In fact, they want the radiation to increase. They want the GMO to wreck the Earth because they believe they're going to have such advanced genetic technology and also nanotech and to be able to merge these systems and create a new world and basically create unlimited planets. And so who cares if they destroy this one in the process of keeping us, the non-evil folks, from taking control. And that really is their cosmology. And so I was about to say before you said it, they, with computer programs, even when they built this plant back in the 80s, or I guess late 70s, they put them on fault lines all over the place. Most of the power plants are. And they can do actuaries, even back then, knowing statistically these are going to melt down, there's going to be tsunamis, there's going to be earthquakes. They knew what they were doing, and then they're already ready, and I've read their own writings, and they say this themselves on many issues, to then use the crises they create in a societal stampede, like a war you start, like funding Al-Qaeda, then you take liberties to fight the force you funded. Creating these global crises, they then know we will stampede and give them our energy, our resources, our support to then support their next phase of the plan. So it's really like ancient hunters would beat on drums and have fires and chase mastodons off cliffs. That's what they're doing to us.
Well, you're exactly right. I think that, if you look at the basic mantra that these people live by, it's, order out of chaos. And obviously it's order for them and chaos for us. And we have to understand that if this is in fact the plan, that this radiation threat, which is now becoming more than a threat. Obviously, your team is out measuring this, and you have, the various hot spots along the west coast of this country. And you'll see that because, a current is not, the Kuroshima current that sweeps down from the Arctic is not going to be homogeneous. It's going to hit the shore in different places, and some more than others. But this is clearly a threat to this country. And my question to Leanne when I spoke with her last week was, why haven't the people you and I and the public been made aware of the efforts by the government to protect us from this threat. I mean, if they're so interested in protecting us and taking our rights and surveilling us and doing all these other things, it would have been a very simple and relatively inexpensive matter to track this radiation from the time that it leaves, the shores of Japan, across the Pacific, and as it sweeps down, heading towards the United States. Because, in fact, this potentially could be a threat to our health here in the United States if it does bioaccumulate, and if we have, as you've said before, from the Mach 3, you're going to have plutonium, and which is a highly toxic material, probably more so than many of the uranium and other things that are leaking. But if you look at this, why haven't these questions been answered? Why hasn't the public been reassured by the government? Why hasn't the International Atomic Energy Commission gone over to Japan and worked with them much more closely? Why hasn't funding been developed on a global basis? Because this is going to be a global problem. Why have we left it to TEPCO to basically hang out to dry when this is really going to take a huge undertaking in order to get this under control, much, much worse than Chernobyl? These are my questions. Why haven't these relatively simple steps been taken of measurement, the determination of the level of the threat, projections, trends, identifying those places that might over time become hazardous, for swimming and the rest of it? None of this information has been forthcoming. That does not happen by accident. Anybody who works around this material would understand immediately this threat, and they would immediately take action to do these very simple things that I've suggested. So clearly, this action is being suppressed actively.
Well, I'll tell you the bottom line plan, and then I want to expand on it and get your take, Doctor, because you're obviously a really smart guy that has a deep, well-rounded general knowledge of how the world works. And I want to get you back in the future for a full hour, to really get into all this. But bottom line, let me just quantify all this for everybody, and then I want to get your take on it. From their own writings, but also their actions, it's undoubted, and I want to get your take on this. A, if you agree, but B, expand on it, that this is what's happening. The elite have decided they're God, like every other megalomaniac from Nero to Hitler. But this time they've actually got the fruits of incredibly smart people developing systems compartmentalized like Legos that are then taken and in black ops and corporate reservations then constructed, tested, and then deployed from beta to actual implementation. And the plan is, in the testing phase, wreck everything, order out of chaos, poison the population where we physically can't have children anymore, where there's mass die-offs, and out of that medical practice, practicing on us in a mass experiment, developing systems of life extension, regenerative systems for the elites out of the mass test with binary weapons and other systems on us, and then they will so wreck the biosphere that then they will play God, being the heroes, rebuilding it, reinventing it, but in the process removing the scourge as they see it as the mass of humanity. I mean, in a nutshell, that is the cosmology. But looking at this, even though they're very smart, I think at a deep-seated level, it's a rationale to just do evil because their plan is not going to work.
Well, I agree. And I think that, if you take what you said sort of to the next step, I think that the evil is coordinated on this planet. I don't think that it happens by chance. I don't think these people leave much to chance because they're far too bright to do that. I mean, they're twisted, kind of demonic type people, and they enjoy inflicting pain. I mean, this is something that is very difficult for the average person to understand because, we love our families and we have, fun and we enjoy things and we have deep sensitivities and we have this part of our humanity. We have a conscience. These people don't. They don't have that. They're wired differently. They're fundamentally different than we are. They enjoy killing. They enjoy destruction. And that's what they do. They destroy things. They're not builders. They're not creators. They are destroyers. And they have to use our creativity in order to basically reflect their evil purposes, because it's just like a gun. I mean, you've talked about this a million times. A gun is an inanimate object. It's neither good nor evil. It can be used for both. And they are able to take technology, which is vastly superior and advanced to what we now know. I don't believe that they would have unleashed this radiation or any of these things, GMO crops or, the chemtrails or any of that.
If they couldn't reverse it.
if they hadn't already probably have the technology to protect themselves from the scourge that they're releasing on the rest of us. They probably already have it, or at least they believe that they do. And so at this time, we're the suckers. We're all sitting around basically waiting to be slaughtered. And I think that my message is one of hope, actually. So many people listen to your show and they feel like you're a fearmonger or that you're depressing. And yet I see you as an educator, and you're bringing people awareness. And if you look at history, if you look back through time, you recognize that all tyrants make the same fatal mistake. I've said this before. They centralize their power because they don't trust anyone. They kill those who are surrounding them because they don't trust them. And they become isolated, and the power becomes more concentrated. And as you centralize control and command, it becomes much more vulnerable. And this is what has caused every tyrant to collapse in the past. That's what's going to cause these people to collapse, and as they become increasingly vulnerable. You have a single building with the NSA. I mean, there are multiple, but you've got this giant complex. It's just one place where they have all of this information. It's not distributed. And so, again, this is just an example. If we decide as the people, globally, I'm not talking about just Americans here, I see this awakening happening throughout the world. I have friends all over the world, very smart people, all around the world. They're becoming increasingly aware and becoming ready to act. They simply don't want to act individually. They want to act in a coordinated fashion where you can actually take charge of this situation and do good. And it is my belief that there will come an event, a manufactured crisis of some sort, that will become a crystallizing, galvanizing event around which good people who have the means and the training and the ability to make change will be able to use that, come together, and in an orchestrated way, bring to justice these megalomaniacs that have led our society for thousands of years. I mean, we've been under the same kind of Babylonian system of pyramids with a crazy person on top telling everybody else what to do. And I think that we've reached a point where we've realized that we don't really need that. Of course, we need government, we need laws. I'm not an anarchist, but I think
But we don't want centralized systems run by psychos. We're going to come back and break down solutions with what you're saying, but that's the key. I'm here to get people out of their trance, right, knowing there's smart people out there, and then organically individuals together through a grassroots movement, we will change things. I'm just here to get people awake to the takedown of our civilization and who's behind it. And I am yelling and screaming to get people out of their trance, to get them up off their butts, and then countless others like you, Doctor, working together. We will develop the solution against these enemies, especially as things get worse and worse under their rule. That's what's essential. We'll be right back. Stay with us. After our guest leaves us, I'll finish up with the callers. And then for the balance of the next hour, we're going to get into all the news I haven't hit yet. There's more breaking. So we're going to get into all of it. Here's the issue. We've got to expose that there is a shadow corporate government, which we've now done. We've got to expose that they want us impoverished to control us, and that their main goal is set up planetary government to forcibly reduce population. And a lot of people say, well, there are too many people. Well, that can be debated one way or the other. The point is, this is an excuse for total authoritarianism, a greedy capturing of all future technology in a breakaway civilization that's already there on record, and the ultimate form of discrimination. It's an Elysium-type scenario, but right here on Earth. And that's what they've used COG for, continuity of government, in case there was a nuclear attack from the Russians, developed in the 40s and 50s and 60s. They've used basically that plan to build the technocratic dehumanization government worldwide that's now phasing out incrementally the old systems, which aren't perfect, but aren't designed to be purely genocidal. And you can see Homeland Security worldwide, because governments all have the same system now in most areas. It's designed not for COG, but for collapse, but to control the collapse. And so they're getting ready to release superbugs. They're getting ready for economic collapse, wars. They're lining up for all hell to break loose. And, Doctor, do you agree with that statement, Dr. Rick Davis, MD, ogenics.com, that we can see all the forces lining up for a World War II level event times 10, where just every revolution moves forward so they can control what they believe is the march towards the singularity?
Yes, I agree. I think that we are looking at a coordinated effort on a global basis by these elites. And as I said, I believe that they have some extremely smart people that are working with them. And what we need to do is come back and use our own intelligence and the things and the resources that we have as people to counter this craziness that is about to befall us. I do not believe that anything happens by accident. I think that everything is planned. I think that we're seeing a tremendous amount of organization to bring about the collapse of the Western world right now, with the derivatives and with the Fed and with the various other things that are going on, both from a financial and educational. I mean, every system, every structure is infested with these people at this point, and it can only bring about disaster. I mean, they are fooling themselves if they don't believe that there are smart people who are prepared, who have listened, who are awake, and who are trained to be able to take these people to justice. Because it's not just me. There are millions and millions of people just as awake and just as prepared to do what needs to be done in order to arrest these people and bring them to justice in a Nuremberg type of situation, because that's what's going to be required. I don't want to see violence. I just want justice.
Well, exactly, and they're not going to stop pushing. People say, oh, Alex, just go along to get along. It'll be okay. No, I wouldn't be risking my life in all this and being this hardcore and this out in the open and risking my life if I didn't realize there's no future if we don't beat them. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You've got to resist these people 110%, because where they're taking us is what we should be scared of. We should be scared of not standing up against them.
Well, that's exactly right. I think that anyone who's ever stood up against a schoolyard bully recognizes that there are cowards beneath. And all you have to do is stand up to them. And once you do, they will shrink away like violets in the sun. And it's not difficult. It's not hard. And you're exactly right. The thing that I fear is that we will not be successful. It's not about the people themselves, the people that we face that I see as the arch enemy of humanity. I think that the failure of us to resist them is the thing that we should fear the most. And they've done an excellent job. I mean, they have put this plan in place for a long, long time. They've really thought of just about everything. But what they don't understand and what they can't understand is the human soul. They don't understand our capacity to be human. And
Dr. Davis, stay there. Back in 60 seconds in the third hour to talk about the soul. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back live. Dr. Rick Davis, MD, is our guest for just a few more minutes. We'll have him back soon. And powerful information, a little bit of buzz on his line via Skype, but it's still great technology. Talking about the soul. The Bible says in the end days, the alchemist of the earth, the priest of the New World Order, will trade in the men's souls. And that's the essence of what they want, but they always end up failing because, as you said, they centralize control. And even a psychopath or just a very evil mercenary, someone who doesn't care about others, even though they consciously are willing to do these bad things and subconsciously are evil as well, there's still areas of humanity in them. And that's why a Nero or others end up usually committing suicide after they've done a whole bunch of horrible stuff to people, because it's something else nasty they can do. And I've read a lot of literature by top globalists who say they might just blow the earth up to keep on willing, and as a beautiful monument, in their words, to their work. So some of them are so evil they even get that. But I think a lot of it is they sabotage themselves once they get to the pinnacle of power. The only problem is now they have such high-tech weapons, they might sabotage everything else in the process. Doctor, closing comments on that.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And I think that it's up to us as people to try and project our humanity now more than ever, because that's really going to be the ultimate weapon here. This is a spiritual battle, and we need to demonstrate our humanity. We need to put aside our minor bickering among ourselves. We need to come closer together with our family and our friends and our neighbors in order to prepare for whatever it is that these people have in store for us, which isn't going to be good. I mean, this is not going to work out well for us in the short term or for them in the long term. But it's going to be us taking the most powerful thing we have, which is our humanity, our love, all of our gifts as people, and utilizing our intelligence and our creativity in order to overcome the things that they're planning for us in this world takeover, in this chaos, this order out of chaos, if you will. And I think that we have the tools innately as people, and all we have to do is work together, coordinate, identify our strengths and look at our weaknesses, and overcome the game that's been played over.
And that's why, exactly, they're racing to bring in automated, autonomous robots, drones, submarine ships. They want to replace humans so incredibly bad as quickly as possible. China, France are moving with government funding to replace humans. They're having huge losses to do it because this is the end game. I want to have you back in the very near future, Doctor. Separately, I saw on one of your medical sites, and we'll get you on about this in the future, but an example of all the medical stuff that's been developed that gets shelved, like a virus-killing technology you've developed.
Well, that would be something we'd love to talk about. We're actually very excited working with a group within the Defense Department right now on something that's quite amazing. And but we can talk about that a little bit later next time. But
well, tell us a little bit about it, yeah.
Well, if you could imagine a technology that could be provided to people, not just troops, but the average population, if there was an exposure to a lot of the weaponized viruses that are currently being looked at, whether it's Ebola or Venezuelan encephalitis, or I mean, you can go on and on. There's a lot of different things out there that are very, very bad, have huge kill rates, and if there was a single drug that is essentially a natural product that doesn't have horrible side effects, etc., that could be provided to people, this would take an entire weapon system right off the table. And those are the kind of things that I and others are working on to try and provide solutions. I mean, there are significant solutions, not just in medicine, but in energy and all kinds of things, and transportation. And a lot of this information has been suppressed over time.
We're going to have you back on about this. Ogenics.com. Dr. Rick Davis, MD, an amazing individual. Thank you so much for the time. We'll be talking to you again soon.
Thank you, Alex. Have a great day.
All right, folks, we're going to come back, go through your calls that have been holding very quickly. Then I'm going to shift gears, get into all this news I haven't hit yet. Stay with us. We'll be right back. There's a Ron Paul video, an article up on Infowars.com that's so important. Congress defers the president on NSA reform. And that is a report dealing with the fact that Congress, with all this coming out, is going to let Obama whitewash everything and, quote, decide what can be done with the NSA and what can't be, when it just means business as usual, total criminal surveillance of the American people. And there's an excellent article I want to get into a little bit that says, when did America turn into the Soviet Union? We're going to tie that into the corruption of Chris Christie and where all that's going. Coming up. But right now, let's move quickly. I'll try to shut up, just get to your call, move on to the next person. A bunch of nuclear power plant workers, Navy people that worked around reactors, you name it, have called in. Frank and Dave and Joe and Jerry and Chris. I'm going to go to those callers on the topic of increased radiation and why 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they said, they shut down a beach that had 200 times or 200% higher levels of radiation investigated. Now they go out and go, yeah, it is increased radiation, 1,000%, but big deal. We're not going to even investigate it. We're talking about that attitude. This is bigger than the radiation. And we've gotten local newspapers to cover it, talk radio to cover it, but it's like so many other things. I mean, we need to just admit this is going on. It's like the solution to things is admitting it's happening. Like the question, why did America, or when did America turn into the Soviet Union? I mean, we are becoming, in many ways, we're already worse, but there's still vestigial islands of Second Amendment, family, private property. But quickly, that's being eroded. The water's rising. And, I mean, it's just horrible watching this country die like this. And then so many people are immune to worrying. And they're the ones that think that's an attribute. It's like they don't have nerve endings. So, to use the fire ant analogy again, they're sitting in a pile of fire ants. You're sitting there with them, and you're trying to get up. You're tied down by the government, the bureaucracy. You're like, fire ants. They're killing us. Get them off. It's even worse. They're not tied down. You're tied down sitting in fire ants. They're not tied down, but they're paralyzed when it comes to feeling. They can move, but they don't have any feeling. They're numb. And you're like, can't you see the fire ants climbing at you? Can't you see all the red spots? Fire ants kill people. They're all over you. You could wipe them off and then untie me. And they're like, so what? Yeah, I see them, but I like having red spots. And they're my little friends. And I'm like, no, they're bad. They're bad. You want to get them off of you. And I just come up with these crude analogies, but that's how I feel. And then I study the people running things, and they are so bad. And it's scary. People say, well, why are you trying to scare us then? I'm not trying to scare you. This is ongoing. Admitting it means we can turn it around. And everybody's in panic mode right now over one thing or another, and they'll project it onto their families or work. Or, I mean, the numbers are there. People are freaking out because they know things aren't right. And the government says, that's Al-Qaeda. Give your rights up. You're afraid because of Al-Qaeda. No, you're afraid at a subconscious spiritual level because you know big stuff's about to happen. And, man, I'm telling you, everybody can feel it. Big stuff's already happening. If you're in countries where the globalists turn the food and water off and 30 million starve to death a year, let me tell you, I'm just going to go to your phone calls. It's so crazy, the stuff that's gearing up between China and Japan threatening to attack each other again. And China just came out and said, we're going to invade that island, prepare for invasion in the news. They're telling Chinese, prepare for invasion. I mean, it's on, folks. And this isn't even a news item. I'll guarantee you, if I went to a Rotary Club or something, or if I went to where supposedly the creme de la creme of Central Texas are, I would walk into those meetings, and they would be talking about how to make money, but not even really how to make money. It'd be how to make money within an establishment system that's a con. They would be giving me the latest hype on that, and they want to talk about football, and they want to talk about how many women they've slept with, and they want to talk, and I'm like, okay, listen. You understand, this is all a wool pulled over your eyes to blind you from the real world that's going downhill very, very quickly. And once this stuff starts kicking off, you're not going to be able to put it back in the bottle. Okay? So we're at the edge of a cliff right now. I can spiritually feel it. And I don't know if it's going to be a bio attack, super bugs, total collapse, war. Oh, man, it's beyond chills now. It's not being able to stop it. The mental illness that is spreading everywhere. The paranoia that is spreading everywhere. Again, of stuff that isn't even a threat. And people are like that because deep down they know they're in a crisis, but they don't know the roadmap. They don't know why they're in a crisis. Like the media tells them we're not in a depression, the economy's great, everything's wonderful, but they know it's not. And I think that's it. There's a crisis of confidence that people know the system's lying now, but they don't know exactly about what. They just know it's all bull. All right, let's go to your calls. Frank in Michigan, thanks for holding and calling. You say that you're a treatment plant worker on radiation. Well, go ahead.
Hello. How you doing, Alex?
I'm not actually doing too good.
Well, hopefully I can give you some information. I work for a government agency, a local government agency. I've been a wastewater treatment plant operator for about 11 years now, and I know quite a bit about this stuff. And I work in Michigan. We have the Great Lakes and all the inland lakes and the streams and everything, so we're pretty protective of our water. We have about the same stringent regulations as California does. And I'm talking to you as an insider, giving you some information and kind of put my job on the line for this, but I'm going to tell you some stuff that I think is very important for the community over there in California. Every community has a wastewater treatment plant. And there are two types. There's a groundwater discharge and a surface water discharge. Now, these are EPA regulated, but they don't test for radiation. They just do basic tests, and if you're okay with your ammonia and your nitrates and your phosphorus, you're good to go. But what I've been looking at with the radiation, and I'm putting two and two together with this, and this is something I think the residents of California really need to understand, that the older cities have degrading infrastructures. And what I mean by that is there's groundwater infiltration, there's surface water.
You're saying radon and other natural radiation is now, because the pipes are all rotting and that it's leaching out. You're thinking it's natural, or what's the inside info?
No. I'm saying you have to look at the rain, because a lot of these wastewater treatment plants are stormwater and sanitary combined, which means that if it rains and it gets into the stormwater system, where's that rain coming from? It's leaching into and being combined with the wastewater that you have to treat. So where does that end up? It ends up being either in the groundwater as the end discharge, or surface water.
So you're saying that it's probably rain from Fukushima and other things coming down and running out to the ocean, and that's why it's radioactive?
Well, I'm thinking that it's contributing to what people are drinking. And I think that because the wastewater discharge goes into, like I said, a stream or or groundwater, and water treatment plants also have degrading pipes, so they also are receiving this stuff.
So very interesting, but what's the bottom line? I mean, I don't think you could get in trouble for, just as a citizen, giving your perspective on something happening on the West Coast. It's like folks ask me if they can have permission to put my bumper stickers on their car. You don't have to ask permission. That's the whole point. But I mean, specifically, it's interesting what you're saying. But what's the kernel? What's the key of what you want us to get from what you're saying?
Is I think that Jakari, while he's out there, he needs to test. He needs to go to the local. He needs to go to the local wastewater treatment plants and see what the results are, and see if he can. And now this is all public, so he should be able to grab a sample and test it for radiation.
That's a great idea. In fact, they did tests of wastewater plants in Central Texas and found higher radiation levels a few years ago, mainly because the fluoride they're getting from China has radioactive isotopes in it, but also some of the groundwater, the aquifer. That's an idea. We should send them to water treatment plants, because that's a place that you're saying it's going to be concentrating into those areas. Is that what you're saying? And so that's a good, yeah.
And that's going to affect the whole public as a whole. I mean, and these concentrated areas, people have no clue.
Oh, I get it. You're saying you don't want to tell us that there's high radiation at the water treatment plants. I've actually read that and seen that, because it precipitates out into the pipes and the linings at the facilities, and that's why they found it at wastewater plants in Texas. That's CBS News. Is that what you're getting at, sir?
Yes, exactly. And the reason why I'm saying this, and this other thing kind of, I saw a blurb you wrote a little while ago that China is trying to buy the Great Lakes water. And I'm telling you...
It's incredible. No, I saw that. Great point, sir. We're going to come right back with more calls. We're going to get a quick pop-in at the start of the next segment from California as our team now goes south to get radiation readings. And then I'm going to shift gears and into all this news. There's an article up on Infowars.com that really makes me sad, because I read what the guy wrote, and I can tell he means well. And it also shows how the system uses good people to carry out evil. In fact, I don't even want to get this sheriff's deputy kicked off the force, but it does illustrate the hubris and the arrogance, and so he needs to be, he probably needs to be, because it needs to be an example to others. future sheriff, he's a cadet right now, military veteran, says protesters should be exterminated in gas chambers. I would beat your effing bleep just for the sheer joy of it. And when you read what he says, he thinks he's doing good and actually says some good things. And it just shows how whacked out all this is. We're not just dealing with evil people, folks. We're dealing with very dangerous, very, very dangerous people who mean well but are not centered or are not old enough to understand how things fit together. That even if you don't like what some protesters saying to you, insulting you, you don't beat them over the head and destroy their First Amendment, because your First Amendment is important as well. And then when you violate somebody's rights, you are destroying the very fabric of society. And again, folks, I'm not putting on an act here on air right now. The dread that I've got, and I've been having it the last few months, and I'm talking to everybody else has it, and I'm really freaked out. I don't know what's about to happen, but it's bad, folks. And it's a feeling of, the analogy's like knowing one of your kids is going to die, but not knowing who it is, and not being able to stop it, and then just seeing these childlike people all around me. I'm not on a power trip. I don't think of myself as smarter than people. Why do I know all this stuff and other people don't see it? It's all right there. 98% of what we talk about, it's all on record. I mean, this is like saying you don't want the city to blow up or something. It's not hard. I don't want world government. I don't want nuclear war. I don't want bioweapons released on me. I want prosperity and to build stuff. And I see society taken over by a bunch of crooks with fancy propaganda, with a bunch of good people working for them, and I'm sick of it. I hate my job. I'm going to be honest with you. I like exposing evil. I have fun in it doing sometimes. I used to. Now I like to fight evil, and I'm more effective at it, but it's sickening to have to look at these people and study them. I think that's what I'm whining about here today, is that I don't want to look at the New World Order and study all their ugliness. I want to look at the stars and the moon and the fish and play with my children and be happy and be around nice people. But every time I'm around them, I get beyond upset and want to protect them, because I realize that I'm in denial, that I can even take time out to live, because the enemy is coming down on us, ladies and gentlemen. And so I've got to learn everything about the enemy. I got to focus on everything they're doing. I got to get inside their heads, which is horrible. Because when you're inside their heads, you see all their gang signs everywhere, their symbols, their celebrations over us, their victory arches, their power, their predatory system. You just see, and you read them bragging, and they're open criminals, and they're gross, and they're the worst of humanity in control, because the good in humanity does not crave power, only the evil. And so now they're in charge. And then when you have knowledge of evil, you then see the evil in you. And even though it's nothing compared to these people, I am just incredibly guilty. I'm guilty of thoughts I have that the average man would think of and think, that's nothing. But I realize where it goes and what it does. And I realize it's the little sins of the heart that in the final equation add to everything. But I'm a fleshly person. I can't stop being who I am. It is only through God that we can find fulfillment. And I put it all on God. And I put all of these issues on God's plate and just say, I'm trying as hard as I can. You got to help me be strong. And we got to help everybody else to be strong, because even Jesus wept when he knew what he was going to go through the next day. And I'm not worried about what I've got to go through. That's almost a cop-out and easy. I'm worried about everybody. All the kids they're putting on deadly drugs in the schools, all the GMO, all the diseases, all the little kids dying in cancer centers, all the things they're doing. I feel it. Love is no stranger to me. I'm the opposite of a psychopath, and it hurts really bad.
We're on the march. The Empire.
Folks that thought the New World Order was a joke and you think it's funny, you're now going to get a frontline seat to it. That's all I can tell you. I've gotten behind here, but I said I'd go to Joe and Jerry and Chris, but that's all I've got time to. Sorry to Brian and Dave. Oh, wait, I want to talk to Dave in California. He says workers are ordering iodine in government. I've got to get to those. I've got to get to the other news. I may have to go into overdrive. I wish every day this stuff wasn't true, but you don't have to believe me to go out and see that it's true. You can look around you and see it all unfolding. And we see the tactics of the system saying Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Alex Jones, they're all discredited. They said the healthcare law was a scam, but we were proven right. But see, they play that mind game of saying, no, you're discredited, hoping weak-minded people buy into that. And that doesn't work anymore. I've seen different media people who I've met or talked to over the years will say, oh, privately, Alex Jones told me this is all fake and there's no new world order. When I was on the BBC, in fact, I even have this on that white iPhone. We ought to put that out because I kept it rolling after the show. I never even thought to counter that. And I confronted a Bilderberg group member when I first walked in. He was leaving the set. I did get that on tape, put that out. I get in. They were trying to cut me off, so I just took over. And then when they come back from break, they go, Mr. Jones said it was all fake during the break. Total slander, total libel, total defamation, total fraud. But that's a tactic. And I'm saying that's how they totally use a lie. A well-known individual that made a film that, kind of promotes a New World Order view as the solution, who put me in it without asking years ago, said in a big conference on TV a few weeks ago, I saw the video, I might play it just to show the evidence of a lie, not to defend myself because I don't need to be defended, just to show how this tactic is used. He said, I talked to someone that knows Alex Jones really good. He even fenced the lie. And Alex admitted that there's no New World Order, no global government, none of this is true, and it's all a lie. Well, the New World Order is all being announced around us. But see, that's the mind game. Oh, Alex says it isn't real. He betrayed all of you. Doesn't matter what they do to me or how they set me up or what stuff they make up, because the devil's coming against me from 100 different angles right now. Believe me, it's amazing. And I've found strength in the whole thing and found a higher level of understanding throughout it. But I am sad for those type of people that use lies against folks and then bear false witness and say that an honorable, totally truthful person is a fraud when they themselves are frauds. That's what's disgusting about this world. They say they're liberals when they're the opposite of liberals. But that's all they can do. And I realize that I'm so close to this evil that even when I went off the set and they had security throwing us out, and then I later went back that night and, saw the YouTube of it on BBC when I came back saying, that was all an act. He admits it's all fake. Total lie. Said no such thing. That what must it be like to literally prey on your audience? I know it's so easy for these people to prey on people. That's what I don't like. I don't like preying on innocent people and lying to them. I will tell you, just like I like lancing a pus if it's in my big toe with an ingrown toenail, I like it when a bully starts a fight with me and they make the first move and I start showing them who, how the cow ate the cabbage. But it's not because I like beating somebody up. I like bad people being shown justice. And I'm sick of evil people. I'm sick of them. And they've got to be dealt with and faced head on. No more playing games, folks. I think about the level of crap we put up with. The on record they put fluoride in the Soviet Union in the 30s, and Hitler picked it up from Stalin when they had a pact with him. The Russian-German Nazi deal. From what, 1941 when they went into Poland? 1940? I don't know why I digress off of that. I got so much to cover. And then they put it in our water, and it's on record giving us cancer and dumbing us down and makes your teeth brittle. And the American Medical Association, American Dental Association say don't brush with it. And no one even knows that. We even forced them to stop promoting it. But it's still there. And that's just one example. They put roach poison in the water. And then they think it's funny. The mayor of Austin is assaulting me and my family. He thinks it's funny. And I sit here and put up with it. I'm sick of it. Had enough of it. Just right there. Just on that front alone right there. They literally hike their leg and do you know what right in our face every day. And let me tell you something to everybody out there. If you keep putting up with all this, if you keep going along with the system and laying down to it, you deserve what you get. But I'm here to tell you, I don't like this stuff that's going on. And I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers. But I know you don't just throw your arms up and just let a bunch of crooks run wild. The FBI announced last week they're not even going to do white-collar investigations anymore unless they're politically directed to do so. Because the crooks run the asylum, folks. The inmates run the prison. And you know what happens when they finally get full control? All Hades breaks loose. And they've taken hundreds of thousands of military personnel, the ones that aren't that smart, the ones that are screwed up, in many cases, and they're putting them as police who literally see the public as an enemy and who talk about how they want to kill us if we look at them wrong. Hey, why don't you guys go fight Al-Qaeda, the government runs in Iraq right now? And by the way, most of the troops are the best people you'll ever find. They find the bad apples and promote them into these departments and into these federal agencies. Now, some departments that aren't evil, they try to find Boy Scout good guys. Honest to goodness, tough guys. But most of the time, you got a bunch of social workers and a bunch of control freaks and a bunch of soldiers who aren't real soldiers, who want to go around pushing unarmed people around and getting in the face of protesters and intimidating people. Let me tell you something. You don't intimidate me. Every instinct I've got tells me you're a tyrant wannabe and my enemy. And you morons, once the Civil War starts, really think there aren't going to be a bunch of people that come down on you like a ton of bricks? You think you're the tip of the spear? You're going to get bent back real fast. There are so many hardcore, serious people who don't want to go completely wild, but they're ready. And they've got names, they got lists, folks. And I don't even have to talk to people to know that. I don't want 300, 400,000 cops to die in a week. I don't want hundreds of thousands of U.S. military personnel to die in weeks. It will happen if this civil war starts. And I think deep down, that's probably what it is. Obama's going to false flag and blame it on patriot groups and start roundups. And then people are going to start killing whoever comes in the roundup. And it's on, folks. That's why I just went there. That's why I'm not even going to our reporters right now, and I haven't gone to the calls in the news, because I have this deep feeling of dread, and I can see all of it, and they're clearly getting ready to start a civil war in this country. That's on the table. War with China is on the table. Financial collapse is on the table. Superbugs are on the table, and it's all coming together, and it's not just me. It's every anthropologist, sociologist, civilization technician. It's everyone that studies this. Anyone who has a serious mind, every gauge says red level danger Will Robinson. And the public picks it up at a subconscious level. The public's going crazy right now. The anxiety, the divorces, the problems, the weirdness. Every executive I talk to that manages large groups of people says they've never seen such craziness. We're in a societal crisis, and it's just the beginning. So I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but I know what's coming at us. And, man, my whole body is just like, just get ready for it. And I wish the general public could get ready for it and affect against the enemy, because your instincts are ready to fight this, but your instincts aren't conscious, so they don't know what to direct it at. The cops are all freaked out. They're directing it at the public. The public's all freaked out. They're directing it at the government, when the government itself is just a level of the globalist control grid. It's the rubber on the tire or the tread on the tank. It's not the enemy. I don't hate the tread of a tank. I don't hate a cop who's misguided. I don't like the brain in there, the computer program running the tank. I don't want to go chew on the treads of the tank and break my teeth off. But that's what's going to happen. And they've got all that planned out. And let me tell you, they're crazy enough, folks, to start a civil war in this country. The number one thing we better be worried about is that, I'm telling you, as a smokescreen for the financial collapse, then the war, because, anybody that's fighting the government after the Chinese attack that island, they probably got to deal with them. See, I'm really giving you battle plans I think they're up to. We're seeing all the pieces. Start a civil war with false flags. Blame the financial collapse and derivatives going upside down and a total Federal Reserve takeover of everything on the Civil War causing the collapse. Then start a war with an outside group so you can say, we're under attack, the Chinese just sunk 3 of our carriers, but we're not going to respond with nukes and they're not going to respond with nukes. It'll all be staged. I'm serious. This is how they'll do it. Probably giving you their actual battle plan right now. Just going out into the ether and all the data and pulling it out. Then, oh my gosh, you can't resist. These people that are resisting, they're helping the Chinese defeat our troops. Images of sinking aircraft carriers. The public will then go under mind control and say, yes, we've got to root out the domestic group. They're with the Chinese or they're with Al-Qaeda. I'm telling you, that's the plan right there. Through the crisis today of just days of racking my mind about what they're going to do, I think that's a prime battle plan that you just heard. Because, again, top generals in history can look at the other enemy and know them well enough to know what move they're going to make, and then you're able to be ready to counter that. And I'm telling you, folks, I have immersed myself in this like no one else probably. And that is one of their main plans that you just heard on air. That plan you just heard, that is what they're lining up to do. You notice years ago we told you before the financial collapse, they would bring all this into place. I want to go to our reporters now. We'll obviously do some overdrive here. We're going to go to Jakari Jackson, who's outside the Golden Gate Bridge. It looks like he's on the city side. He's going to give us the radiation readings and tell us where he's going next. We're also going to send him to some water treatment plants because we just had a tipster remind me that water treatment plants is where the radiation precipitates out because it condenses there, or the word would be dehydrates there, basically. It's a concentrate of it. That's a good tip. They're going to go on down to Southern California. But Jakari Jackson, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Thanks for having us, Alex. We're out here, like you said, right outside the Golden Gate Bridge. We're continuing our tour. We've gone as far north as Portland, Oregon. Now we're back down here in San Francisco because just a little bit south of here, we had some very high levels of radiation at Half Moon Bay at Surfers Beach. We found radiation levels in excess of 10 times of what's considered normal for that location. So we came up here. It's not too far. So we want to warn these people out here, and we'll do that right after this broadcast.
Well, good job. What other intel do you have?
Well, we've been out here, Alex. We came with our Geiger counter using the CPMs, the counts per minute, and we found about 62 counts per minute. Now, south of here at Half Moon Bay, they say the normal CPMs or counts per minute is around 30. So we're heading about double of what's considered normal, just a little bit south.
Jakari, that's good news and bad news, I guess. And I guess still no word with the city and the county there about why there's 1,000% higher in readings you got, 1,400% in other readings. They've confirmed it's much higher. Any word on that?
Well, just like you said, Alex, there's the good news and the bad news. The good news is that in our travels, the concentration, the highest concentration of radiation seems to be centered around the Half Moon Bay area. Of course, not good news for those people who live in that location, but good news for everybody else. But we still seen high levels of radiation, higher levels of radiation, double going up north and also to the south of here. But people are still, they're debating. They say it may be naturally occurring radiation from things such as thorium, but I definitely do not want to discount that it could be Fukushima radiation.
Sure, and there are a lot of earthquakes there, and that releases a lot of the thorium and radium and radon and the rest of it. The issue is that it's increasing from what it was in the past, and you've got Fukushima undoubtedly doing this, and you've had the cover up there, so that's why we're trying to cover this. We've only seen a few newspapers cover it, and they've tried to rebuff us, but then they admit that we're right. They just say that it's basically bad that we even care.
That's pretty much the gist of it. And like I said yesterday on the show with Anthony Gucciardi, some people are convinced that it's global warming for whatever reason. Just many different theories and ideas as to what could be causing this high level of radiation.
I'm wondering if a kaiju is to blame and if it's about to come out of the ocean over there and attack the Golden Gate Bridge.
I'm not exactly sure. That's one theory that I wouldn't be surprised to hear out here, Alex.
You know, Jakari, you said you've been to Southern California before visiting family, but you've never been to Northern California, memory serves. How beautiful is Central and Northern California?
Well, I'll tell you, Alex, you guys were telling us when we were getting prepped for this mission that it was a very beautiful drive. It is very much that. It does concern me that, you know, the bioaccumulation could rise in those areas of the radiation, and we could get more radiation in those areas. But just on the outskirts, if you drove by it, it's just some of the most beautiful scenery, even out here in beautiful San Francisco. I don't know if the guys can get a shot of Alcatraz over there.
Oh, yeah, you're right there on the city side, right by the Presidio, right?
That's right. It's a great location, Alex. We're very happy to be here. We are a little concerned about the radiation. Sometimes I think I might be safer out there in Alcatraz than out there in Half Moon Bay. But, you know, we're going to continue on the mission, and when we get back, we're just going to bathe in some iodine, and we're going to keep going because we want all of our info warriors and other people to know what's going out here so they can come out here with their own Geiger counters and do their own test.
Absolutely. And you heard some of the radiologists earlier. They said wearing clothes is a big part of it because these particles go right to your body. Obviously, being around the area where it was 1,000% higher than it should be probably isn't great. But they say when you fly in an airplane, you could probably get more radiation than that. But certainly, yeah, I wouldn't be snorting any of the sand off the beach there at Half Moon Bay, Jakari.
I wouldn't, and you know, as you mentioned that, we talked to some people going up and down the coast just the other day when we came back to Half Moon Bay, and people said that, you know, once they got this information, they stopped walking their dogs out there. One guy said his boys were swimming out there, and he got the news. He pulled them out the water. He's not letting them go back, as we talked about yesterday. A young lady said one of her friends goes swimming out there, and he's going bald, and she thinks it's exactly directly related to Surfers Beach and the high levels.
And she was saying in a matter of months, it's like sudden clumps of hair falling out.
Because like I asked her, I said, you know, people go bald. But she said, no, you don't understand, sir. He's gone bald, and he won't stop swimming in there. I try to tell him to get out of that water, but he keeps going back.
Wow. So where are you going after this, Jakari? You're going to go talk to locals? Then I guess you're starting down towards Los Angeles?
Yes, that's right, Alex. We'll go do a man on the street out right after this broadcast. Then we'll head south to Diablo Canyon. There's a nuclear facility out there. We want to test around that location. Also Los Angeles, hit up some of the sites and scenes out there and just continue down south looking for these levels of radiation. Now, like I said, we're not always encountering high levels, which is a good deal, but we definitely want to warn the people that bioaccumulation could increase, and we definitely want people to be aware.
Absolutely, because even if it's just double in many areas what it should be, it shows something's going on there. Well, investigative reporter Jakari Jackson with the rest of the great crew is out there. Tomorrow, Jakari, only on for a full 30 minutes. I want to talk to you and the rest of the crew to get their takes on everything that's been happening. Jakari Jackson reporting from Central California, the Bay Area. Stay with us. I'm gonna chase the sky forever. We are in the middle of unbelievable wonderment. So much good, so much beauty, so much to protect. And the sun is gonna burn. And we've allowed the television and this artificial culture to literally program us with anti-human garbage to make us malfunction so that we can be conquered and then executed. And never even know we were killed by soft kill weapons that are on record being put in our food supply. And I don't know how you counter something like that. I mean, it's like people didn't believe Hitler was doing what he did for the first 6, 7 years he was in power. Really the first 8, 9 years. And it's just par for the course historically, and we're in the middle of this craziness. And the average person is so narcissistic and so into being cool because of the television. The television shows you this arrested development, the way people act. And people act like people act on television. That's not real. So you're talking to these programmed people that aren't real. And you can't get through to them because they're delusional. They think if they just laugh at someone that cares, that gives them power. They're delusional. I mean, look at this article that I keep saying I'm going to cover and I haven't. Children who watch too much TV may have damaged brain structures. The more time a child spends watching TV, the more profound the changes. It leads to more gray matter in the regions and less in others around the frontal polar cortex of the area of the brain. And it goes into saying it doesn't allow them to differentiate. It was a Japanese study that looked at 276 children ages 5 to 18 who watched between 0 and 4 hours per day, with the average being about 2 hours. MRI brain scans showed children who spent the most hours in front of the box had greater amounts of gray matter in the regions around the frontal cortex, in the area of the front of the frontal lobe. But the increased volume was a negative thing, and it was linked to lower verbal intelligence, said the authors from the University of the City of Sindali. They suggested gray matter could be compared to body weight and said these brain areas needed to be pruned during childhood in order to operate efficiently. These areas show developmental cortex thinning during development. And children with superior IQs show the most vigorous thinning cortical in these areas, the team wrote. These areas show developmental thinning during development. And the children with superior IQs show the most vigorous thinning in the area, the team wrote. Now, again, other areas of the brain, it's better to have more cells. But then when you get into the cerebral cortex, to layman terms, put this, it is wired so specifically to be able to access all the other areas of the brain that when you go on into the study, they found you're very good at watching and very good at being programmed. But it's basically turning your frontal lobes that are meant to process and be a traffic cop into like the rest of your brain tissue, to make it simple, where they couldn't focus, they couldn't make fast decisions, they couldn't critically think. They're really good at watching TV, though. You become really good at being a spectator, really good at being a jellyfish, really big at doing nothing. In other studies, this is not the first of its type, been around for 60-something years, listening to radio increases, if it's informational news, increases IQ, increases neuron connections. Reading, even more. Why? Because when I am reading and I say blue whale, you pull up a blue whale. That makes your cerebral cortex, tying into the tying into your ears, everything else, and the areas of the brain that have memory. All those areas then build their muscles, their fibers, their neuron connections. I use muscle as a figurative speech, not really muscle. They all communicate. Okay, you understand? Because it has to go get the data. What's a blue whale look like? But when you're watching TV, it's right there. You don't have to do that. It actually grows the brain different in development. All right, I appreciate folks holding, and I apologize for having you hold. Jerry's in Texas. This is a nuclear scientist. We'll go to Joe, Chris, Tom, and Dave. And then I'll hit this other news into overdrive that I didn't get to in the main transmission. Let's go ahead and talk to Jerry in Texas. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, Alex. There is really almost no place you can go to get a concise concentration of Fukushima news. So I aggregated a huge number of different kinds of Fukushima stories to one site, Fukushima Update Report. And there's
by the way, I told the guys last week I wanted to get you on. So I'm glad you called in. We'll get your name and number right now, and we'll get you on. We've done so much coverage of this week. I'll probably want to get you on for an update next week.
Well, that sounds good. I really want to compliment you on having the doctor. He nailed it. I mean, I've got nothing that I could say that he didn't already say. It was incredible. You've done good getting that guy on it.
Well, thank you. Wow. By the way, Nico, one of our great producers, has contacted you, so look in your inbox.
Okay, will do. I do appreciate it.
Contacted you last week. Go ahead.
Keep the spotlight on it.
We are. What else is on your mind? I mean, what do you think is really going on?
Oh, I think it's obfuscation from the very beginning. I had somebody tell me in the industry the other day, we know 10%. And what we know scares the heck out of us, so what is the other 90% we don't know? I was talking to Arnie Gunderson. He said he's got some stuff he's going to release soon. And, of course, at that point, he couldn't tell me what it was.
Let's get Artie Gunderson on ASAP, guys. In fact, we're going to get your number right now, sir, and get you, Artie Gunderson, everybody on. Because, you know, my issue is Fox News even reports that the universities say all that radiation is going to start just hitting now over the next 4 months in a whole new wave, bigger than originally hit, and there's no coverage. So, I mean, Fox did cover it to their, credit, but it's just not the coverage it deserves.
Well, ABC really gave it a whitewash. I stayed up and lost a lot of sleep for nothing on the ABC Nightline show. It was ridiculous.
Well, my issue is this culture of whitewashing everything's got to end. And it doesn't mean we have to run around like chickens with our heads cut off about everything. But, I mean, China says they're preparing to nuke the U.S. Russia's freaking out. China says they're set to invade a Filipino island. War is going to start if that happens. And the Chinese aren't known for saying they're going to do something and not doing it. I mean, I've talked to top political scientists, military people that study the Chi-Coms. This is really bad. They don't openly go around threatening people. And the word is it's not bluster. They'll probably do it. So, I mean, it's just craziness. It's craziness. What do you think's going on?
I think it's craziness. I think, like the doctor said, there's a large group that has an agenda, and if it's building on fault lines or it's getting China worked up to go after the Philippines, it's all on the list.
Oh, man, and the elite have spent more in the U.S. than all countries combined on record on underground bases that are basically like shopping malls with pools and 10 years of food and artificial sunlight and nuclear reactors and everything. And then we're all up here with these crooks playing God. It makes me so angry. God bless you. I appreciate your call. We're going to come back in this long segment, final segment, and go to Joe, Chris, Tom, and Dave. And that's it, because I've got a couple news articles I said I was going to hit. And I got to hit them. I mean, I haven't even gotten into this incredibly arrogant statement. I meant to have this as my top story today. Bailing out health insurers and helping Obamacare. And a prominent consultant to health insurance companies, Robert Lazowinski, recently wrote a remarkably candid blog post that while Obamacare is almost certain to cause insurance costs to skyrocket, even higher than already has, insurers won't be losing a lot of sleep over it. He goes on to brag they're going to make more money. I mean, that's ridiculous. They wrote it to scam everybody and shut down their competition, and now they're acting like, oh, gee, we're not too worried. We're going to make more money. I mean, that's like going in and robbing a bank saying, gee, I'm not too worried about this bank robbery. I'm going to get some money. Acting like you're not the bank robber while you're holding the frickin' gun. I mean, it's ridiculous. All right, we're taking calls from nuclear engineers, physicists, nuclear power plant workers, Navy officers. Got a medical doctor on earlier as a guest, getting your take on the increased radiation levels, which we're going to do another report over the next few days with the reporters, and then next week have some guests on. But we're going to move out of this reporting soon. I'm just trying to really spotlight it to get a handle on it myself, because I'm doing research on air with you right now, just like everybody else. I'm trying to figure this out with you right now. I figured out a lot of other stuff. I don't have this figured out. So we're here having really university meetings together with all these different thinkers and experts and lay folks and myself and our reporters. And we're trying to really do the job that government and corporations and media are not doing. And we don't claim to have all the answers. We claim to care. We claim to be involved. We claim to be well-researched and to correct ourselves when we're incorrect. But we're just trying to find out what's happening here. Got some other news I'm going to hit here in a moment, but first, let's go through these calls quickly. Joe in Georgia, former military decontamination specialist. What's your take on all this?
Good afternoon, Alex. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate that. Well, we have an ongoing nuclear war, basically, with Fukushima. If you started a nuclear war, you couldn't ask for a more perfect one than Fukushima. It's a grave situation, and it's going to be an extinction event for a lot of people and a lot of species. So you're going to see all sorts of radioactivity up and down the coast. Different spots will have different levels, obviously, same way across the United States. And as it progresses across the globe, you have similar situation. But the only radiation that's good radiation is no radiation. And there's no such thing as decontamination. That's a total misnomer. You can only contain radiation. You can't decontaminate from radiation. You can only push radiation to some other place besides the space you're in. So it's dire. It's an extinction event for a lot of humanity. And,
well, that's what top physicist Suzuki is saying, and a lot of others. I mean, I hope it's not that bad. I mean, Dr. Busby's says it's pretty bad. My issue is 5 reactors got damaged. 2 of them completely blew up. One of them was a plutonium-uranium reactor, MOX-3, and I went and read what all the top folks said about that. I mean, and it's just pouring into the ocean because they use ocean water, for those that don't know, pumping out of the ocean onto it that runs right back in. It's like a continual Chernobyl. They debate it's 10 to 100 times worse than Chernobyl. That's the mainline guesstimate. They don't know. It's just 10 times worse. Chernobyl killed 1 million plus people, the UN says, since '86. So my only issue is how do we protect ourselves? And again, I sell iodine. You know, we fund ourselves with things people need. I mean, that's the best sales tactic in the world, is sell stuff people really need. It's like selling ice water in the Sahara Desert. in the middle of summer to, I go out and go, I'm doing this for my family. I ought to sell this survival shield. I ought to buy this company up. Nobody even knows about this. Put it out high quality, lower the price, and fund my operation while I help people. That's what we've done, but it's a win-win-win across the board. But that's not enough. That just mitigates it a little bit. I guess you live in Georgia, Joe. I mean, what do you think we should do as a country?
Well, as a country, we need to, as best we can, and all the experts and yourself using this platform that you have, is clear your desk of all distractions and try to mobilize a world community to attack this event in Fukushima.
That is exactly what. Exactly. Where are all the big brains? They're using homeless people. And again, I get emails going, "Why are you bashing homeless people?" Folks, that's not what I'm doing. You don't send, poor, sad, alcoholic old men like they're expendable to try to save humanity. You send the best men who want to be expendable for humanity. I mean, isn't that a no-brainer? Don't we send our best to try to take on the biggest crises? We don't send our worst.
You shut down the half the state of West Virginia for some chemicals that leaked out of a tank into some river, and people are 5 days without water right now, but you don't say a word about Fukushima. What does that tell you?
It tells you they don't think they can fix it. Well, at least you try.
Well, they don't think they can fix it, and there must be some benefit to somebody.
Well, yeah, it's going to depopulate a lot of folks. And as the medical doctor said earlier, they've got a lot of advanced technologies the elite have that they think can help, cleanse themselves of it. Problem is radiation shoots through your DNA and gives you cancer and tissue damage. I don't know how that's super science stuff. I don't know how once radiated, like you said, you can try to stop the exposure and get out of the area or get it. But while you're there, you're getting it. Very well said, sir. God bless you. I appreciate you calling. Chris in North Carolina, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Jones.
Hey, thank you.
I'm a recently retired intelligence analyst, and I have a degree in Homeland Security. And there's 2 points I wanted to make. I recommend as far as how you can, because we need to go on offense and we need to go on defense. And I think a great way we can go on offense with the government is that we can have people call from all over the country, the EPA or the CDC, and we can record what they're saying. And then those people that record what they're saying, they can send to you or they can send to somebody. And basically you can get a baseline of what each individual officer of that particular part of the government is doing.
Exactly. You've got to leverage the general public as the human intelligence out there to do it. They shouldn't even send it to us. They should all put it on YouTube.
Well, exactly. But what's nice is if you can send it to a central area, then it's easier to make the picture of what's going on.
No, I understand. So an organic citizens threat fusion center, which is really what Infowars is, but I'm not. This is totally overwhelming for me to try to track all this data, and I don't have the money to have the analyst to even be able to look at this. So who does it? I mean,
that was my job, but that's just a great way to kind of see what the deception. Because if they're all saying the same thing, then there's a deception going on. But real quick, I wanted to make another point, and I wrote this down. I'm recently retired. I feel like God has called me to deliver this message, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
In intelligence training, we learn how important open source intelligence is. It is knowing what to do with this public information that is so vital. The Chinese often use the 1,000 grains of sand method of gathering intelligence, which throughout history has been very effective. Each grain of sand or person is given a certain mission that they are to go out and complete. I feel many people on your station have a great idea of what really is going on in America today. In a way, we are the individual grains of sand. It has become clear to me that Christians are being persecuted, with the recent reports of Army instructors labeling traditional organizations terrorists. The next IRS scandal that seems likely will be directed at the church. It is likely that Homeland Security will begin, if not already, to approach ministers of the church, which we know they have. If the ministers are not prepared, they will likely see the badge and hand over their member list to protect themselves from the threat of terrorism. It is vital that the listeners sit down with their ministers to let them know to not give over the list. It is also important that they keep the list in a single secure location. If we all do this at once, it's like having thousands of brains with one objective. If the preacher knows this could be coming, then he likely will investigate this information himself, eventually passing this information on to the church members. We have the ability to create a chain reaction event that can wake up thousands, if not millions.
Oh my God, you're such, absolutely. This is what you do. You go into your church, it's more than just get the list. Once they have the list, they go, you now work for us, spy on people. And there's no real terrorists in the congregation, obviously, but it won't matter. Later, they're going to make the preacher sell radicalism to the church or pick him up. And this is how an authoritarian takeover happens. And that's what's so crazy. I think it backfires, too. If we force a debate about this, like you're saying, then the military is able to see the 1,000 grains of sand, and we are all our own open source threat fusion center, and we see the real threat. That's why threat fusion centers are actually waking up police and military, because they're in the threat fusion centers watching us and seeing that we're telling the truth and going, oh, my God, they're sitting in a globalist command base. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, here's the problem, Alex, is many Christians today, they're good people, but you have to realize that all this influence going on, all the fluoride, all the stuff on the TV, it's dumbing us down. So they're in a fog. And we have to realize that, and we have to wake them up, because so many Christians, I know you know them too. Here's what they'll say to you. They'll say, well, Jesus Christ will come back before then. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that America can turn into Hitler, that America won't turn into Germany or Hitler's, type tactics. People need to be aware, they need to be awake, and they need to be prepared for the worst, because this can happen. And just as Jesus said, as in the times of Noah, so shall the end times be. So, this is a real thing, and people need to wake up, and I really am concerned for the body of Christ, because the reason I'm so concerned is I know what's coming. I know there's going to be things that are unexplainable, and when these people that don't have the reality of the Bible and what it really says, because it's so much bigger and more, it's just amazing what the Bible actually says.
No, I know. It's all right there for those that have eyes to see, but most don't. Do you have the same sense of serious concern about a huge event about to happen?
Honestly, the biggest mistake that preachers ever taught was taking out the literal context of the fallen angels in the book of Noah. You know how I think these things, how a whole world could be deceived? And you see it in the propaganda and movies, that the aliens came down and they planted the DNA and stuff like that.
The Nephilim.
I believe these things exist, and I believe, you see the UN has a leader for the alien, in case the alien comes. The Catholic Church is talking about, if there's aliens, the church will still exist. And you see these people look at these UFOs. And
there's definitely something going on, and they could stage something like Project Bluebeam, too. Very well said. We're skipping this final break here in Overdrive to go to your calls. Very well said, Chris. No, it's crazy. But just all the stuff we see is crazy. The collapse evidence, the depression globally, the police state buildup, the preparations for political persecution, the super bugs, the radiation, the super volcano, the sun acting weird. It's like all hell is breaking loose, folks. And I hope we make it through whatever's coming. But China's threatening to invade islands now. That is just such massive news, and it's nowhere in U.S. news. But drudgereport.com and Infowars.com. Red linked on Infowars.com. This is so insane. This is so insane. Meanwhile, I go to the airport, and some low-level, untrained, and I'm not knocking them, they just want jobs. I don't hate the TSA people on average. The supervisors are usually the thugs. Wants to chat me down like I'm a terrorist, and they'll go, oh, yeah, I heard your show yesterday, Alex. And I'm just like, then you really think I'm a threat on this airplane? Give me a break, man. Give me a break. I am not under suspicion. I am innocent until proven guilty. I am sick of the system treating good people like we're crooks. That's what a tyranny does. It wants to make you feel like you are bad and you've done something. I have done nothing. I don't do anything. And I'm sick of it, except expose corruption as an act of survival. Not as an act of I'm a good guy and I got all the answers. You got corruption just running rampant everywhere. Totally illegally spying on all of us, harassing people domestically, harassing Christian groups. All of it's illegal. And then they're up there going, well, you know, Clapper is allowed to lie to Congress. I mean, Congress is like, oh, we're going to let Obama decide what to do with the NSA. Man. That intelligence committee is just a bunch of traitors. Of course, they're all part of it. They don't want to get the blame. And again, so many yuppies say, well, I don't have anything to hide. Your data is incredibly valuable, dum-dum, for the select corporations and groups that get it to be able to model reality and the future to then high-frequency trading run by Goldman Sachs on record cheats everybody else and is a fraud. But they're so powerful, they're allowed to do it. It's like rigging a casino or a craps table, giving you bad dice, okay? I'm trying to explain this to you. It's rigged, dummies, and I'm talking to new listeners that don't get this. They want all the data because they can dominate markets with it. And then that destroys competition. And then that destroys productivity. And then that makes everything fall apart. And then you've got a society based on fraud, not based on quality. And I'm not some goody two-shoes. I'm not saying you're not always going to have some fraud in the system. We're not perfect. But, man, the fraud is trying to push out the productivity, and that's how you get a collapse because they can't help it, folks. They're greedy. They want everything, and they're going to screw the whole system. So often I hear, well, I know what you're saying is true, and it's worse than you say. A lot of businessmen and people in government tell you, but if this stuff comes out, it'll bring the system down. Bring the system down. The system is cancer. The system, the status quo is racing corruption. So, man, I don't want status quo. Let me tell you right now. I mean, if we had a government that had some problems and there was some other group against that wanting to say change it, but they were worse, I would side with the lesser of two evils. But while criticizing it, I'd say this is not good. I don't like some of the things with it, but it's a lot better than that. So we need to, you know, because it doesn't mean everything that comes along the road is something better. But we know that what this is not good. I mean, what comes out of the other end of this thing is pure nightmare. Let's talk to Dave in California. Thanks for holding. You're on the air from California. You say you work for the city. You say city workers are ordering iodine.
Yeah, a couple things, Alex. First of all, we don't need a war to stop all this evil. You know, you just cut the head off the snake and the body shall fall. You know? And then the other thing is...
Yeah, but I mean, this is a bureaucracy of corporate and government interests worldwide who all hide who's behind what. So how do you cut the head off a snake that's got 100 heads?
Really have 100 heads. We know that. There's, what, 6 ruling families? That's it.
Well, the problem is they've set up institutions and foundations.
The body will fall, Alex. You cut the head off, the body will fall.
You think so?
Yes. Oh, yes. And then the other thing there, bud, you're missing the point about Fukushima Daiichi and Agenda 21. How else do you think they're going to get people willingly to move to the East Coast, to give the land back to nature under Agenda 21 over here on the West Coast?
Oh, let it get bad enough and then make rewild the West, as the UN has said.
Yes. Then you force people to move back east, live like sardines in a little can. You guys are missing it. They want this. They want this. What about the Patriot, Act, about the 100-mile unconstitutional zone around the coast over here, Then you add the Fukushima into that and take us to the East Coast.
Let me ask you this question. What's the intel you've got on city workers buying iodine?
Man, we're buying iodine for ourselves. And it's just enough to get organized to get people out of here. That's all I can say without getting myself killed there, buddy.
Well, that's wild. So, are a lot of people waking up in government over there? We know the federal government just bought 14 million doses just a few weeks ago.
Well, let's do this.
All right. I appreciate your call. Very interesting points. Tom in Hawaii, you're on the air. Thanks for holding. Retired fire captain, radiation contamination certification. What's your take on it, sir?
Yes, sir, and also NBC qualified as a Navy corpsman with the Marine Corps 2-9 in Vietnam. my take is I want to talk about three things. The first thing, why are you getting those readings? Are you up to date on the Farallon dump that occurred in the 50s and 60s?
I know there's been all sorts of dumping in the ocean, sir, but I mean, that specific doesn't ring a bell.
Well, that's a radioactive, I think it was medical waste, cobalt, things like that from radiation machines and low-level stuff. That might have been stuff from Lawrence Livermore. I don't know. But they dumped it out there years ago, and we never fish out there, never went there, and it's been hot for years. The other thing is the source supply for the city of San Francisco is Hetch Hetchy Reservoir up in Yosemite. Comes down through the pipes, and secondary holding is the Crystal Springs Reservoir, south of the city in the peninsula by San Mateo, Belmont Road City, that area. If you're going to do anything as far as filtering, that'd probably be the place to do it at, because you're going to get air contamination. They're two beautiful lakes. They're watershed, no trespass, and that's the city and peninsula water supply.
Yeah, everything you're saying is right on target. Your phone's breaking up a bit. What's the bottom line here?
Bottom line is like what your previous caller said. I'm not getting into the geopolitical baloney because my mayor was Dianne Feinstein. That'll tell you enough. You want any truth out of City Hall or Washington, D.C., forget about it. What you want to do is protect yourself and stay out of the rain, use common sense. The other thing I wanted to mention was the NERT teams, the neighborhood emergency response teams we have in San Francisco that were set up primarily for earthquake and fire from the 06. They didn't want to get fooled twice, but now we have the nuclear problem. And I haven't heard anything about that. I think they're being set up for nuclear fodder just to go out and like the homeless people in Japan are. It's a sad situation, Alex, and I'll bet you anything the guys that held my position of captain, battalion chief in the fire department in San Francisco and on the peninsula, the whole Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, all the major hubs in the smaller cities too, which a lot of them are consolidated now, so we're all kind of hardwired together now. So when some information gets out that needs to get out, we get it, and then it's pretty much decided at a probably a level above fire administration, whether it's going to go out to the public.
All right, amazingly interesting. Call me back when you get a better connection sometime. I guess that's one of the retired fire captains from San Francisco living in Hawaii now. Very interesting. Wow, love talking to those folks. I'm so flattered we have such great listeners with such expertise. God bless you all. Let's just pray to God and work hard, and we'll probably make it out all this craziness. But I see a bad moon rising. See you back tomorrow live on the radio, Lord willing, 11 a.m. Central.
We're on the march. The Empire.
Nightly News has a bunch of reports by the reporters.
Alex Jones and the
7 o'clock
GCN
tonight,
Radio Network.
Prisonplanet.tv.